another one of these. Us just looking at the new product fresh off the presses and try to digest it in less than a few days.
Yeah, it's a timely review from Dice Funk, a tabletop role-playing brand, I guess. We don't do much unboxing or whatever, but whenever a particularly large product comes out that we're interested in, this is only the second time. I don't know, I'm acting like this is a tradition going back centuries, but we did a review of the Spelljammer release that I thought was really fun, and now we have a new... Actually, it's a 3-book set that comes in a big box here. Oops, I just made a big bonk with it.
Yeah, this is the second, I think, of these sort of particular 3-book sets here. Spelljammer being the first, but this one is the Planescape Adventures into the Multiverse box set.
Multiverse stuff hot right now. Everyone's in the Spider-Verse. Everyone's getting Kanged. Are you aware of Kang from Marvel's Kang films?
Brained.
Yeah, we're getting Loki'd right now. But yeah, I don't know how often we're gonna do these, but I feel like that one was a big success, and I have a lot to say. Something we're going to be referring to a lot in this episode is that we have done a Planescape campaign on Dice Funk season 6 of the show. So I have a lot of thoughts as someone who's run a big Planescape thing. Another great touchstone is the video game Planescape Torment, which is obviously a huge influence on not just me, but this book or these books we read. So
absolutely. Like we'll get to that when we talk about the adventure proper in the book there. But yeah, if you're a Planescape, it's clear that the writers of this were Planescape Torment fans, and there is a little bit there's a bit of the design of the adventure itself that is like laser focused on fan service for that, and understandably so, for sure.
Yeah, so I think it's pretty obvious what we're doing here from context. This is a review of this product instead of your normal episode. We should probably introduce the concept of Planescape if you haven't listened to season 6 of Dice Funk, which is in 1994. There was this was second edition at the time, I believe.
Yes, it would be second edition at the time, yeah.
Yeah, they released a kind of multiversal setting thing. I think the lead designer was David Cook, kind of a famous guy in the scene. And this thing is notable for a number of different elements. One is with the philosophy of it. There's a number of factions which represent different philosophical takes on the universe. It's very... a pretentious kind of thing, which is why I love it. There's a lot of religious stuff. It's like set kind of in the afterlife of Dungeons and Dragons. So, when you're playing a normal campaign, people are always talking about Tiamat and Tyr and Sayanine and stuff. And hey, if you want to go visit those folks, you do that in Planescape. So this is it's the high concept kind of afterlife multiverse thing, which it has its fans. It wasn't a huge success in the sense that it's been 30 years since there have been any meaningful. Well, there's little books here and there, but this is the big return of Planescape. It's not like it's been thriving the entire time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing I find kind of interesting about the original Planescape book, just double checking something. One note is that the illustrations were done by an artist named Tony D. Terlizzi, and the alt art for the book, at least I know that for the books, I think were done by Tony in particular. So another little nod back to the origins of its design and such. But yeah, in terms of a formalized product campaign setting for Planescape, it's like Spelljammer, it's been multiple editions of D&D, decades since the prior release. And I think, yeah, like you sort of alluded to, Planescape feels pretty relevant in terms of player interest and stuff right now, not just because of general multiverse interest, but also just because it allows for a lot of opportunities to have alternate views of traditional types of creatures that might have been bounded by rigid alignment sort of treatments. One common thread you'll find when you're reading through these books is a lot of creatures depicted in very non-conventional settings if you're into Faerun specific stuff. And that's also very fun because it allows for it to be allows for a range of more lighthearted takes on these philosophical topics while you blend it all together.
Yeah, in the normal, like you said, Faerunian or like, Forgotten Realms D&D setting, at least as written, is like all gnolls are evil, all elves
Yeah.
are like haughty and superior. Like there's a kind of almost essentialist Gygaxian bent to it, where like one of the hooks of Planescape is like, here's an angel who's corrupt, here's a demon who wants to be better. Literally, one of the party members in Planescape Torment is a succubus who's trying not to suck anymore. You know what I'm saying? So it's a fall from grace. It's a great setting. Another thing that jumps out at me is actually something that's in like the introduction of the setting book, which is backstage of reality. I think that's such a clever way of putting it. It's like you're backstage of D&D. Like here are all the big bads, here are all the schemers, and then they're just like chilling at the bar. You're just like seeing what the movers and shakers doing when they're not tormenting level 2 rogues.
Like, I'll also like just the first book, Sigil and the Outlands, is honestly, I have one big issue with the book I'm going to bring up to you here, but there's so much like setting stuff in this book that makes it very fun to imagine just running a campaign, just kind of hanging out in Sigil and the Outlands, that it's surprisingly inspiring, whereas I felt much less inspired by the Spelljammer book, because so much of that was on like explaining how spelljamming kind of works and the ships and stuff like that, whereas this I felt way more like, ooh, interesting, kind of.
Yeah. It's interesting you compare it to Spelljammer, because obviously that was our first book review, and we're going to make some of those comparisons. But I was literally just looking up David Cook, the designer of Planescape's, his CV. And here's from the Wikipedia page. When TSR was looking to replace Spelljammer after the setting ended, they suggested a new campaign built on the first edition Manual of the Planes, which is a book that told you about the structure of the universe. The idea sat dormant for a year, but then Cook picked it up and invented Planescape as a result. So it comes directly from Spelljammer. Also, if you don't know, Cook went on to work on the Fallout games and Elder Scrolls Online, so he's still out there. He's still doing his thing. As far as I know, not a problematic guy. I'm trying not to stand him, but he seems cool. He touched a lot of things I really like. So also, Tony DiTerlizzi, the artist, also did a lot of art for Magic the Gathering. And I think the thing he's best known for is a book series I've never read called the Spiderwick Chronicles. I don't know if you're aware of this. I think they might have gotten a movie.
Yes, there was a 2008 adaptation of the series. I'm not familiar with it myself, but yeah, like, it's neat seeing, like, it's kind of neat to see these sort of products come by, because it kind of traces through a lot more of the history of these other non-Forgotten Realms areas of D&D in general, but also just like, there's just some fun ideas all around where you kind of go a little more outside of just, sword and sorcery, like Dragonlance, Forgotten Realms, and stuff like that. But yeah, where do you want to start first with all this? Because there's a lot of content to go over here.
Yeah, there sure are. I when I got these books, I said I'm just going to read them all in one sitting, because there are 3, and we'll record like immediately. And it actually took me like 2 days, because there's a lot here, and I wanted to read every word. So, this will be still relatively timely, but not breaking news like I was hoping. I think we should start with the setting book, Sigil and the Outlands. I said Sigil because previously it was specified that it's not pronounced like the word sigil, which is how it's spelled, but I didn't see anything. Maybe I missed it. Is there anything in the book that discusses the pronunciation? Is Wizards dropping that strange arbitrary thing about the pronunciation?
I was not familiar with that. If I was to double check the chapter, like, I don't see any information on there about like pronunciation. Like, it'd be nice to have some more pronunciation guides in general. I know there's actually a gag about one of the gate towns having a name that no one can agree how it's pronounced. XAOS. I actually wrote down Zeos, Jaos, Cross Aos, if I wanted to be cheeky about it, Chows. But obviously it's kind of like meant to be like chaos, because it's derived from Limbo. But yeah, like, that's probably one thing that would have been nice from a setting thing, just getting an idea of like what is sort of like the expected name, or what are common pronunciations people might use for these things. But yeah, the first book about Sigil and everything else, I will just kind of lead off by one note. There's one chapter in this entire thing that's about character options, and it is very, very thin in content for people, to the point that when I see advertisements on Reddit, and I'm just going to share with you, Austin, some images I've shared on the server here of images advertising the product. You see things like the Mustival Gardenal and the Hound Archon, and the first words being planar character options. And people might see that and think, oh, are these new player races? No, there's no new player races. There's 2 backgrounds, a handful of feats, and some spells. And that's all there is for player options in this book.
Yeah, usually when I buy a D&D book, what I'm looking for is those kind of player options, because, you know, I've been a human, an elf, a dwarf, or whatever. Like, I've been all that, so I would need more stuff. So I would normally be much more disappointed. This is a unique situation in where I'm way more into the flavor and the setting and stuff, so I'm not that disappointed, but it is notable. There's no subclasses. The spells are extremely limited and specific. So yeah, you're not here for, like, more character sheet stuff.
Correct. I mean, there's a lot of interesting information about how you could possibly make a planar-oriented character, but that's going to be a lot of just making up at the table. This is best thought of as a more GM-centered world-setting information, menagerie of creatures, and then the adventure attached to it there. But yeah, striking amount of detail in the book once you get to chapter 2 about the City of Doors, and just so much in there. You could probably just use this chapter alone and actually run a campaign entirely in the city.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who's run a Planescape campaign in the last decade or so probably has basically just skimmed Wikipedia, and then just kind of freeballed it from there, because if you just get a couple of the main concepts, the possibilities are pretty infinite. Like, if I didn't do a podcast, like, I probably would only do Planescape campaigns, because I'm not that interested in the traditional heroic fantasy. Even when I do campaigns on the show that are, similar to heroic fantasy, like, I do still slip in things like, the philosopher slot, or like the insane Modron, just some Planescape bullshit, because that's just where I'm pulled just by nature. So another recurring element of this episode is going to be what Austin would do if we go back to Planescape in a future season. So prepare for that.
Yeah. I find it really neat, though, how it does a good job of really drilling in the point about philosophy being a major focal point, and not necessarily presenting any individual philosophy as like the de facto correct one, because of the intersection that Sigil and the Outlands has with all the outer planes, and how those different personalities and stakes play out within the City of Doors and everywhere around it.
Although surprisingly less in the city than you would think. We're going to get there. But so introduction, you get the kind of rundown that we've given you, that this is the backstage of reality where all the super powerful people kind of hang out in the afterlife. There's some philosophical concepts that are really important, such as belief making things true, or like shifting reality. Everything is kind of subjective and negotiable. There's the rule of 3, which is like 3 things tend to happen in 3s, which is just like DM bullshit, or something happens twice, you could force it a 3rd time. It's a very flexible thing. But yeah, once you get that kind of introductory, summary, I think it's literally 2 pages, we get into the character options. I don't know if you want to get into anything with these backgrounds or stuff specifically, but yeah, we have a couple of planar backgrounds.
Yeah, the main gist here is this is templated in a similar manner as what we saw in the Dragonlance book and the Strixhaven book. So these are backgrounds that are tied to the setting, and beyond that, we'll have feats associated with them that sort of set you up at level 1. The feat that's most important here is called Sign of the Outer Planes. It basically just allows you to pick a particular alignment or plane area that your character sort of has an fusion towards. And then at level 4, there's an upgrade feat depending on whether you have a lawful, evil, chaotic, good, or outland focused sort of focal, or you can just be a planar wanderer. And it's just like a little bit, mostly ribbon features that are kind of nice add-ons, but that's effectively what the 2 backgrounds are. You have the Gate Warden and the Planar Philosopher. And the latter one, I will say, to their credit, they do a good job of at least adding like simple 1-sentence summations of the different philosophies, because there's 12 factions in Sigil, and that can lead to just a lot of instead of leafing through several pages of the philosophies, you got a nice little compact understanding of what they are. Or you can just invent your own philosophy. Nothing's stopping you. They even tell you how to do that, how to make your own faction.
Yeah, that's the first installment of, if we go back to Planescape, an Austin Yorsky product. One of the ideas I was kicking around of reading this book was like, instead of doing what we did in season 6, which is where everyone started like freshly introduced to Planescape, and then I let you pick from the factions if you want. Lauren's character became a Society of Sensation person.
Yep.
And Laura's person became was it Doomguard? I think her character had quite an arc. But then the other two just didn't pick factions, which I guess is fine. But if we went back, there's a couple of different things I've been thinking about. One is that what if they make their own faction? The party of season 28 or whatever is like a baby faction that's just coming together, and all the player characters get together to decide what it is. I think that's one potential cool option here. And also, as you said, there's these brief summaries of each of the factions, which is very helpful. One of the things I found really surprising was when I sent a list of the factions to the players for season 6, they all found it very intimidating and like off-putting. Even like a 2-sentence description, they were like, "This is so much homework. You're killing me, Austin."
We have 12 factions. It's going to be difficult to summarize it all the way down. Though, honestly, I wonder if you could make like a table and put them all around on the pins and stuff. It's just hard to say. I had big Ravnica vibes going on here, honestly, when it came to...
Yeah, Magic the Gathering's Ravnica, it came after this. I think Mark Rosewater, I don't know if he's ever said that it was specifically Planescape inspired, but it would be hard for it not to have been, somewhere in his mind, because it's the same kind of big city with factions that represent specific philosophical things. And it's very similar. It's interesting that Ravnica, I think, has gone on to be way more successful. The Magic is like, 10 times as profitable as D&D in the, the paper space at least, and they go back to Ravnica all the time. So one thing I think about Ravnica as a distinction between the factions in Sigil in Planescape is that in Ravnica they also have the added thing that they serve like some basic like labor function within the city, like the Golgari being related to like sewer and waste sort of stuff there. And I think that adds an extra layer of just like, this city has this weird way in which it works, which is not necessarily like completely lost here, but it's a different design space there, which I find neat. This feels like a first draft, right? Like you have things like the Dustmen who like are work in the morgue. They're kind of like the Golgari of Ravnica, but then there's other ones that don't line up at all. So, and also they've been refining it. Like in the original release of Planescape, I think there was 15 factions, and then there was an adventure path or like a book that came out called Faction War, where there was a bunch of the factions were destroyed or new ones came up. We can talk about that if you want, but season 6 is about the second faction war, World War II. We did it again. Right. So I mean, if we went back to Planescape on my show, we wouldn't do another faction war, but once again, I think there's a couple differences between the last time we left these factions and how they are now. Like the faction war split the Mercy Killers into 2 factions, and now they're back as one again with no explanation, which is fine. I don't, they could have completely overhauled the entire thing if it was good. If it's good, it's good. But I think that's interesting. I don't know that there's a direct narrative continuity here.
Yeah. And that's basically it for the character options, though, right? You have these handful of feats. You have the 2 spells, Gate Seal and Warp Sense, and magic items, because I have to explain what mimers are, right? Is it mimers or mimers? I forget. I mean,
in God of War, when you run across the Norse character Mimir, they say Mimir, who is a severed head that Kratos carries around. In Norse mythology, he's a guy who gets his head cut off and the head keeps talking. So I believe it's pronounced Mimir, but I could be wrong. Yeah, they're talking severed heads in the Norse style. Almost everything in the setting is taken from religion, which is like my whole shit. That's my entire career.
you don't say. But yeah, like they have to have Mimir in here. It's Planescape. If you play Torment, you need to have that in there. The Portal Compass is a cute item. Sensory Stone, necessary for the Society of Sensation. So like it's just enough, but then you get to the next chapter when it actually starts going to the city, and then it just kind of starts going like crunchy, like flavorful details about how the city works and how it feels to be in there.
Yeah, so this next section, this is chapter 2 of this first book we're talking about, The City of Doors, introduces what I call like the New York City of Dungeons and Dragons. It's like the biggest, most diverse city. I like the art in here is really good. It shows everything's spiked, everything's covered in blades, like the iconic Lady of Pain, who is on the cover of this book. We didn't mention the beautiful cover with her terrifyingness and her bladed headdress in the front. We do love to see her. But yeah, it gives you stuff that, like the weather and all this kind of fluff and flavor for the city. Is there anything that you want to highlight here in this chapter? Because a lot of it is just like, you could tweak this if you want. If you want the gravity to be lower or it to be rainier, there's nothing stopping you.
I do find it fun to go how many different ways they have to explain that teleportation magic doesn't work the way that you would expect it to. And because you have extra dimensional space, banishment, planar travel, summoning, teleportation circle, all that doesn't work. The funniest thing I like about it is that if you try to summon something, it only works if that target exists within a sigil at all. So like if you're trying to summon a Jinn, if there's not one that matches in the city, you can't summon it. But if there is, you summon that specific one, which I think is pretty, it allows for some silly interactions and stuff that can be fun.
Yeah, the whole thing about portals, it's a very like foundational aspect of it, because you don't want just people just teleporting all over all creation. It also would introduce like huge story problems. Why doesn't Tiamat just teleport into the space and own all of her enemies or whatever? So yeah, you have to have this kind of cosmic excuse that like things work differently, and there's a character, the Lady of Pain, who will simply eviscerate you from the beginning to the end of your lifespan all simultaneously. What does it say here? The Lady of Pain is omnipresent, unknowable, and invincible.
Yeah. Any creature that targets her with an attack spell or any hostile or prying effect, in some cases so much as speaking to her, is assailed by overwhelming pain and immediately drops to 1 hit point. So yeah, you can't simp the Lady of Pain. Not happening. If you ask her how's the weather, you will be thrown into the mazes.
She's so cool. Yeah. In my campaign, listeners know there was kind of a plot twist with her whole existence. I wonder what I would do if we went back, because while she is iconic, she can't really get involved in that much. I've always said that she kind of represents the DM, just that like I can make things happen. Like I want you to have fun, have a good adventure, but if you start trying to be, disruptive, like I could just say your head explodes, But even in universe, she can kind of represent like that, in this wacky wild world of angels and demons, just like there are some things that people don't know, like there are mysteries out there. No matter how powerful or cool your character is, like the reaches of existence are infinite. So I think it's cool in and out of universe.
I think the coolest detail about the Lady of Pain section for me, honestly, is just the 2 paragraphs they devote to explaining locking the cage. Just because this is one of the things we're like, well, how can all these factions kind of get along? The answer is because if they don't, the Lady of Pain will just shut down the city unilaterally, turn off all the portals, let sewage run through the streets until they sort out their differences.
Yep. So that's a plot point in Faction War, that classic book, and Die Vecna Die. Vecna, interestingly, was a major villain in like 2nd edition, then disappeared for like 30 years until, my understanding is, became the villain of Critical Role. So at least that first campaign. So I don't know what Wizards is thinking about with Vecna anymore. There's one mention in the adventure later that I'm really excited to get to. But
yes, I know exactly which detail you're talking about. So we'll get there later on. I came across the same thing. I'm like, what the fuck? This is hilarious. Anyways, next, I took a bunch of screenshots, honestly, as I was going along to take note of, like, because there's just so many. There's so much content. Because once you get past the Lady of Pain stuff, then you get into the factions, and it goes through all the factions, showing their symbols, headquarters, the aligned planes, who their members are, their epithets, and goes plenty of detail where like, oh yeah, cool. If you wanted to play a character for one of these or make up characters for them, I think there's a decent amount of information here to kind of like play off of pretty easily.
Yeah, like I said before, this list of factions is a little different than the last time we saw them. So I don't know if you want to go with like faction by faction, but there are some notable changes, like the Revolutionary League, which were like the anarchists, are now the Hands of Havoc. My assumption is that because there are a number of real world political parties called the Revolutionary League, like the Revolutionary League of Palestine comes to mind in our current moment, that maybe Wizards just doesn't want to even be associated, doesn't even want to be accused of referencing.
Right. And that's
so
fine.
Hands of Havoc.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. Hands of Havoc sounds very Rakdos, honestly. So it's just like...
Yeah.
That was one of the things I was doing, honestly, was just going through and just being like, okay, what color pair are these? And just going with that. One of my favorite details was the Fraternity of Order, because the members are listed as spellcasters, lawyers, and con artists. And I just think that's very funny. And those are the three they have for the high courts who discover laws to find truth, includes con artists, which I find just great.
Yeah, another great detail is the Faded, who are like the libertarians. Their members include bullies, moguls, and warlords. So got their asses.
They're the takers, from Isgard.
Another notable change here, or maybe not so notable, it stuck out to me, is that the Dusters, or the Dustmen from previous edition, are now the Heralds of Dust. I don't know why. Maybe it's not, there's no significance. Maybe that, other title was taken, or I have no idea. I didn't look into it, but...
I think part of it is because Dusters is the epithet for the group. So the group has a different name from that there, because like all the groups have a different term for it, because you have the Defiers for Aethar, the Bleakers for the Bleak Cabal, the Sinkers for the Doomguard, Takers for Faded, the Governors for the Fraternity of Order, spelled Guvners, so very good. And then Hands of Havoc have the Wreckers, Harmonium is the Hardheads, and Heralds of Dust are the Dusters in that respect.
Yeah.
So
some other factions have like dropped off. The Ring Givers. The Ring Givers are now listed as a minor faction. They don't have their own like whole section and symbol. I thought that was interesting. Like I said, the Mercy Killers have reformed, stuff like that. One of my favorite ones to read was the Aethar, who figured very heavily in season 6, and I love that it feels like their description is written to be more in line with my portrayal. Like I thought I took a little bit of liberties, and like no, they're like so exactly the way they are in
I was thinking literally that, right? Because you can take the Aethar and be like, yeah, okay, the gods just are invoking the forms. They aren't actually these things. Like, yeah, that's Aethar as hell. Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah. They're such haters. The Believers of the Source are now the Mind's Eye, which I think actually happened in the book Doom War, or Faction War. I think it says here the Mind's Eye was formed by. It says Believers in the Source is what it says. I thought it was Believers of the Source. Maybe it doesn't matter that much, but that is what it says here.
Yeah. I can see that in the sign of one there. And then let's see, your Society of Sensation, pretty straightforward, and then the Transcendent Order. I like the fact that the two Transcendent Order like representatives they have as NPCs, as like characters in the menagerie, include like a Dragonborn monk. That was kind of funny to see in there. But yeah, I also just like the Transcendent Order because its members are rescuers, daredevils, and athletes. It's like, okay, we just run on adrenaline as much as we can.
Yeah. They're jocks.
They are the jocks, absolutely. The Great Gymnasium is their headquarters. Of course they are.
Yeah. I think later in the book there's like a section where there's like NPC templates for each one. Each kind of faction gets like just kind of like their generic guy, which I think I like that a lot. It's good to help characterize them because they all have like a symbol and a philosophy. But like the idea that like you see one of them coming, and you're like, oh, they have the pole arms with the little grabby hands, so I know that those are the the cops. So we got to get out of here. So I thought that was a good detail. I don't remember that from earlier books.
Once we get past the factions, including like you mentioned the three minor ones, the Free League, the Incantarium, and then the Ring Givers, we then get to the Gazetteer, the Gazetteer, which just goes over all the wards and what goes on in them.
Yeah. It's interesting because I thought this is what the whole adventure would be about, but a lot of this detail does not come up in the adventure that much. The second book we're going to talk about, I think. And there's parts where it says like if your players want to hang around in Sigil for a while, just let them wander around. This is like the part where you would reference this, but all of this could go completely unused if you didn't want to hang around in the city itself.
Yeah, that's kind of why I meant that like this chapter on its own could be the basis for an entire campaign just by building content off of what they had. I like how each ward has a list of encounters that kind of helps flavor what the shenanigans are in that area. It lists what factions are found in that area and then kind of goes over key locations. And honestly, it's the wards are all pretty fun to read. Do you have any particular ward you want to go over, particularly because you have the Clerks, Hive, Lady, Lower Market, and then Under?
Yeah, I mean, we could definitely talk about these. I think the first thing that jumps to mind looking over these sections is the little Mimir asides we haven't mentioned yet.
Oh, so, right. Yeah, those.
Yeah, there's often a framing device in D&D books where it's like, oh, here's Volo's commentary on the monster, or, here's Xanathar telling you suck or whatever. And in this one, it's the Mimir, which in this book in particular, it's the robotic skull. I think in one of their ones, it's Morte, the character from Planescape Torment. So those are always fun little asides. I like those too. We also didn't talk about the disclaimer that all D&D books have that are unique to the book. This one says... Right. Disclaimer, the factions of the City of Doors are not responsible for symptoms associated with accidentally happening upon the cage. Please consult your doctor if you experience any of the following: upset stomach, nausea, existential dread, claustrophobia, or an irresistible urge to wax poetic about philosophies relating to the multiverse. That feels targeted.
Yeah, that last one is laser targeted on you there.
I'm going to Google claustrophobia. You can talk about the wards a little bit.
Sure thing. So yes, for each of the wards, like I said, it goes over, each one has like 8 encounters. So to kind of go over some encounters I found particularly funny. If you go to the Clerk's ward, which was the one there I thought was kind of funny? Yes, the number 8, the obnoxious equinal Cardinal brays atop a street-side soapbox. They attempt to goad a character into a cynical debate about the future of Sigil. I'm just like, that's very funny. I just love that. Just the idea of it, you just get pulled into an argument in the Clerk's ward, and you're just like, I don't even want to be here. You want to be somewhere else then? That's it. Like, it just try to be the most annoying like debate bro in the Clerk's ward. I also, one of the things I like a lot is that the art, I think most of the map art was done by this artist Jared Blando, and the colors and the really vivid depictions are just really fun to take in too, for just the straight up maps. But as you go through each of the wards, you get a good breakdown, just sort of like the general temperament of the area, the factions that are in there, and then the most important buildings of the area as well. And yeah, like I said, it's enough where you could basically kind of do a few little adventures in there. Once you get to Hive Ward is probably my favorite of them just because of the grease pit there, which is like the food district of all of Sigil. And they have this amazing art in there of just showing off all these little food carts set up and stacked on top of each other. It's probably like, if I had to pick an area, I'd be like, oh, let's go to Hive Ward. I want to hang out there.
That's a good point. I actually wanted to mention the map that came in this set because, you sometimes get maps in these books, and it's fine. It's like, oh, here's a picture, of, the local area, and it has the landmarks or whatever. I really liked the one that came with this because, Planescape is spatially illogical. All distances are variable and, simultaneously short and infinite or whatever. And so it's just kind of this artistic representation of places, and I really can see myself, if I was playing in person, just busting it out and being like, here are like the different options. Like the specificity doesn't matter that much because of the nature of the thing, but I don't know, I really liked it this time for some reason.
A friend of mine noted how on the map for Sigil itself, there's a little detail under the Great Bazaar saying location sizes not to scale, which is also just kind of fun because that's of course accurate, but also kind of plays into the fact in my head that, like, how large is the city? Yes, It's large. It's large enough for whatever you need it to be. I'm reminded of the Dragon Heist adventure path for Waterdeep rather, and like Waterdeep is decently explained in that book, but this is so much more deeply explained that like you said, you could toss out the third book that's the adventure and still probably come up with something with just what we have here.
I will say claustrophobia, the fear of being trapped. Google definitely thought I meant claustrophobia and kept trying to get me there, but similar, right? Fear of small spaces, fear of being trapped, but it appears to be what claustrophobia is. Of course, the city of Sigil, also called the Cage, so that's why that is there. That's the joke. Sorry, I ruined it.
Fair enough. Let's see here. I'm trying to see if there is there's any other funny encounters I was able to find here. Oh yeah. The cranium rats. The cranium rats are great. Just they have a special call out in a few different places. Just like, okay, they're a big thing. I would assume that they're pretty prevalent in Planescape Torment as well.
Yeah, there's the famous it's like a colony of rats called Us is the name of it. I think they say by name the character. So yeah, it's deliberate video game reference. And then the adventure you can run into some. So that's a very funny thing we're gonna get to. But yep, that's a first of many video game shout outs we're gonna talk about.
Plenty. One very nuanced quibble here is that they get to a section about one of the, are they called Dabuses or Dabuses? I forget what they, there's one named Fell in the Hive Ward who does magical tattoos. And at the end of that little bit there, it says, at the DM's discretion, Fell can reproduce any magic tattoos detailed in Tasha's Cauldron of everything. I'm like, it would have been nice just to have like one or two example tattoos in the book that might have been just unique to the area or otherwise. I don't know. It's weird to have like, here's a reference to a different product you have to buy that's not the DMG to know what these magical tattoos are. I was a little disappointed with that.
Oh yeah, I just looked it up. Many as one is the collective mind of thousands of cranium rats. Blah blah blah. Yeah, so maybe this is a different one. I'm trying to remember. I definitely remember. Maybe it's Baldur's Gate. Was there a character named Us or We in Baldur's Gate? Oh my god, I have know too much Dungeons and Dragons shit. It's
well, there is well, you gotta remember there's the Intellect Devourer in 3 that's called Us, but that's a different one I think that you're thinking of.
Oh my god. Okay. Yeah. So they get silly with character names. I was thinking of Us.
The reason why I like the Grease Pit so much is because the names of the vendors, Bog Standard, run by Bullywogs, Humongous Fungus, Make It Snappy, Slim Pickens, Sugar and Spice, and the Vine. The Vine is hilarious because it has Mustival Gardenals that offer magical teas and throat-scratching razor vine wraps. I'm like, who is the target demographic for throat-scratching razor vine wraps? I don't know.
Some nasty people out there.
There are some nasty people out there for sure. But yeah, like I'm just rolling through these other ones because then once you get to the ladies' ward, it's the Elegant District. There's I remember one of the encounters is that a Doomguard Rotblade just like looks all shady, opens up their overcoat and has a slew of finely crafted weapons. So you got like, what you buying, stranger? Kind of moment in Ladies' Ward. Very good. And like I said, it just keeps going. Like I was shocked at just because I have the web version. I was just like shocked like how long it just keeps going and going. It feels almost overwhelming. I'm pretty sure it's different, obviously, in book form. How many pages is chapter 2, honestly, in that book?
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. This book is about 100 pages. Each of them are. So it's like a good, 30, 40 pages, right? It's like half the book. It bears a striking resemblance to the notes I do for Dice Funk, where just our locations and characters, and then like everything else is just like figure it out, Mm-hmm. So it appeals to me. I should say I like a lot of the art in this book. I've been disappointed in some recent D&D books which recycle art from Magic the Gathering. There was the Dragon book in particular. I felt was like almost all magic art, and then there was that giant book which had AI art in it. So,
right. That one case there. I will say that speaking about the ladies' ward and the art, one of my details I just love is just this. there's a picture of like a demon going up to the high courts just with a little briefcase there, and it's just like that's the sort of energy I look at. I'm like, okay, that's what this is all about, right? Because like you said, this is behind the scenes. Why would this obviously like demonic character be just chatting casually with what looks to be either a human or a dwarf or something at a courthouse? Like, well, this is just what they do here. This is just how things are. So
yeah, I love that vibe as well. I'll say page 57, there is a mention of the Revolutionary League. It says they were once a popular faction that fell away to disorganization. First of all, anarchists blown the fuck out. Damn. So Sophie and Leon mad as hell.
in Ship, I like, all right, because I was going to talk about this later on, but since we're here in Under Sigil, the other two factions listed here are the Undivided, the Deniers, which is basically holy creatures native of the Sigil. They believe those who pass through planar portals are destroyed and replaced with clones.
That's a Star Trek joke.
Yeah, exactly right. And then lastly, the coterie of cakes, the cakers. The destitute band of rosy-cheeked bullies who assert their multiverse, that the multiverse is a great multi-layered cake, and that baked goods are its fundamental unit of trade. I mean, that's just season 7, that first part right there, right? Is that how it works?
When the cakers come up in the adventure, I was going to talk about this, but for here, I will say this whole thing. First of all, it's just the silliness of it smacks of Dice Funk. Just like there's a whole political party that thinks the world is a cake, but also it kind of is literally true about our universe. I kind of walked ass backwards into that one, so that's very funny.
Yes. Okay. So is an Under Sigil 2 cranium rat squeakers gnaw on the bones of a skeleton, which reach it out towards the characters for help. I just love the fact that there's just a skeleton being accosted by rats. It's just like reaching out silently, asking for help from you. Just like, great.
Yeah. We're going to need to move on to the adventure soon because I can feel us both wanting to talk about it. But yeah, the rat who ate all the food and then just says, "Do what you must, I've already won," which is a meme that is like 20 years old of a rat in a box. Or it's not even a rat, it was like some kind of squirrel in a box of donuts with its big tummy.
Big tummy, yeah. I'll gloss through the rest of this stuff real quick so we don't spend too much time here. But yeah, there's encounters and stuff for the lower ward. Great stuff in there as well. Mainly a goblin mage that is trying to build a golem and asks for 200 pounds of iron. Great. And then to kind of add further point to what I said earlier, the back end of this chapter is about adventures in Sigil, adventure hooks and stuff like that. And probably the funniest thing is at the very end of this chapter on the encounter in Sigil's table, entry 100 is if you roll a random encounter roll of 100, the Lady of Pain shows up. Just
yeah,
great.
Not ideal.
Not ideal.
But yeah, she doesn't figure that much into the story. I guess that's literally the last thing we're going to talk about. But yeah, the Lady of Pain is used somewhat judiciously because like what interactions can you have with her, you know? But
right,
you gotta do something.
Mm-hmm. But once we get past that, then the last basically half of this first book is the Outlands, and going to just as much detail about the Outlands as it does through Sigil, basically.
Yeah, I was very surprised. I assumed that I was buying kind of a Sigil set of books that, you know, that's the iconic location. I never gave that much thought to the Outlands because, you know, their identity is kind of like the neutral plane, and neutral usually means boring. So, you know, whatever. I don't know if we spent any time in the Outlands in season 6, but reading this book and then the adventure, I'm like, oh, if we're going back to Planescape, I think we're just going to do an Outlands campaign because there's a lot going on here, and this really fleshed it out and like brought it to life in a way I've never thought about, even though I've read I think every Planescape book. Like this is the first time I felt like invigorated by this concept.
Yeah, so there are a bunch of gate towns around the edge of the Outlands. I forget how many total gate towns are there. Oh shoot,
16.
Yeah, and 16. For all 16 in this section here, you have information about like regional effects, what type of people or entities are in the area, some notable figures, the gate itself that goes from that gate town to its associated outer plane, noteworthy sites, and then just a set of 4 different adventure hooks for that particular gate town. And like I said, it's shockingly robust to the point where, like you said, I could imagine just doing entire campaigns in just the Outlands, just because it allows for that fun interaction with how the outer planes influence it, and there's pushback, and all the different locations being wildly different aesthetically and tone wise.
Yeah, another thing is the gate towns are more like street level. So like when I was doing season 6, I was like, well, we're going to go to like literal actual hell and heaven, like the super devil and super angels and stuff. So we need to be a really high level party. And it's like, Sigil will be like the kind of safe space between taking portals to like the super ultra mega hyper leveled places. But you don't have to do it that way. Like if we were doing it again, we could do a lower level Outlands campaign. And if we want some hell flavor, we go to the gate town of Ribcage, which is like where the portal to hell is, but we don't need to actually go to hell. So it's a great option to play a lower stakes or lower level campaign, but still get a lot of the flavor that what I was doing before, which was just like adrenaline needle to the heart, where you're only going to the most intense corners. But there's a cool mint version of each of the places.
Yeah, I will say, is there any particular gate town that you want to discuss? Because like it'd be difficult to go over all of them, obviously, but was there any fun things that jumped out at you when looking through them?
I mean, I think we're going to get into them a little bit more with the adventure, because the part of the whole center of the campaign is just like, you need to visit 7 gate towns, do them in any order. So we'll get there. The thing that jumped out to me as kind of someone who's read a lot about these things before, like I don't think any of these gate towns are new, but in the description of Faunel, the Beastlands gate town, it says that a bunch of it has slipped into the Beastlands. I don't know if this is a reference to a storyline I don't remember, or if they're just reminding you that can happen, because in the video game Planescape Torment, I believe, I think it was Cursed, the Tartarus town, like slid into another plane because of the people there's belief. That's the way this works, is if enough people believe something is true, it becomes true. This will be important later. I actually found that was a plot point some listeners on our show had some problems with, because it is kind of conceptual, but like the whole climax of Purgatory hinges on like whoever believes the universe will be a certain way will just literally make that true. And so that's I was curious if you knew anything, if you had any memories of Faunel being previously absorbed.
I don't have any. I don't have any particular memories of that per se. I will say this about Faunel, that one of the arts they have in there, it just sent me like for days, and by days I mean like several minutes, the Null Poacher image they have, just like Mick Mangehide with his little poacher hat. I'm just like, that is just wild stuff. It's just, I do think it's kind of funny, because we have this season where I'm playing as an Ardling, and there was a period of time when they were developing one D&D that the Ardlings were these entities that might have originated from the Beastlands in some way. Ardlings don't exist in here. Gardenals are like the premier anthro animal sort of race they have placed around here. And but yeah, like I don't have any particular memories about like Faunel's relationship with the Beastlands and stuff. I just think it might have been important for the design of this book. And I think it makes the most sense with Faunel to have at least one gate town that is influenced by its outer plane, just to kind of show what that is like. And also, I think it allows for the adventure hooks they have in there, where you have to like almost deal with the dispute between the 3 different Cardinals kind of vying for leadership in the community and stuff like that. So I thought like there's some fun details in Faunel in particular that I thought were neat. Most of the Faunel adventures, I wrote down a note as Fern Gully hooks was my note there.
I also like the Modron train in Automata, which is
yes.
Does it have a little mustache?
Yes. I actually have a picture of that too, of like the train face there is what I put down there. It's just. The other thing I've noted for Modrons are just like they have these like succulent big lips in a lot of the art depictions, which is just almost unnerving but very funny. It makes me that much angrier that there's no player Modron option, just because I just would love to have someone just be that. But
yeah, you would have to bend yourself into a pretzel to like explain why they have their free will. Although Planescape Torment does have a Modron companion. Do you know who voices that character?
No.
It's Homer Simpson,
Dan
Castellaneta. Yeah,
Fantastic.
That is the voice of the Modron companion from the
Other
video
notes I
game.
have for this area. When I went to Plague Morte, I misread the name. I misread the description of the pit as a stinky ink hole rather than an inky stink hole. So that just stuck in my head from now on. It's an ink hole.
But yeah, so basically the rest of this book is about these 16 gate towns that are in the neutral plane, but each harbor a portal to the actual outer planes. I actually want to kind of play my cards close to the chest because I don't know if/when we'll be back, but if we do a Planescape season again, I think it will be like the players create their own faction and then go to the gate towns trying to to help people to get other people on board, like basically do campaigning or something like. I don't know that exactly because it depends on what the players want to do, but like that is one of the foremost ideas, and I would probably just cannibalize a lot of these little details and hooks because they're great
for readers coming in. I'll say one big thing here. It's that, like, on the one hand, a player could definitely have fun reading through this to get ideas of where their characters come from. But obviously, GMs should be careful about letting players read too much because they might spoil themselves about some of the inner workings of how some of these gate towns work. And I think part of the fun of doing an Outlands campaign is just sort of not knowing entirely what each town is and then kind of discovering that as you go. I will point out one of my other favorite details here is that in Sylvania, there's this character that's described as King Uren III, who is like this like little, I think it's a pixie, I think is what they are. Let me double check here. But anyways, one of the adventure hooks in there is that a blink dog eats him and the kingdom descends to chaos while people are expected to try to find the next monarch. I'm like, okay, the king is dinner, long live the king, move on. Just lots of stuff in there.
Do you want to move on to the adventure? Because I feels like we were playing footsies with it the whole time because we're both so excited to talk about it.
Oh yeah, so let's just go. We got Turn of Fortune's Wheel to look at then.
Yeah. Cover is the head of an Arcanoloth, which is a fox fiend. She's smirking very, mischievously, and behind her is a big skull, the Mimir we've been talking about, and at the bottom are a bunch of Modron. This is clearly a reference to the Great Modron March, another iconic Planescape adventure. I don't know, if you're trying to think of what are the most iconic ones, I always think Faction War is the most, but actually I bet the Great Modron March has probably been referenced much more. I think like anytime a Modron comes up, the writer will always mention the Great Modron March. It's like the most iconic thing they've ever done, so maybe I'm underselling that.
I'll read the disclaimer for the book here. Fortune's Wheel welcomes guests and currencies from all planes, realities, and timelines. The house takes no responsibilities for any harm, financial, physical, existential, or otherwise, endured during games of chance, in interactions with guests or house security, or by running afoul of the proprietor. Gamble responsibly.
Yeah, so Fortune's Wheel is a casino. That's the context of that disclaimer. And of course, that's got to remind us both of season 4 when we did go to a casino. And actually, there was also a one-shot we did with James Stephanie Serling, which is in a kind of casino. So I was getting a lot of echoes of our shenanigans here. But this isn't a fully gambling-based adventure, but it's like, an important location. But we'll talk about that. But so this is a confluence of a lot of Dice Funk stuff, and no more is that true than chapter 1, how this opens, which is all your characters are dead. This is obviously a reference to Planescape Torment. When the nameless one, your player character, wakes up in the mortuary. But I also did beginning, who am I to throw stones at homages, right? Because it's literally how I opened Purgatory, is all the characters had just died. I didn't set them in the mortuary. I thought that was too on the nose. Apparently not.
It's too simple. This is beneath my audience here.
Yeah, later Nifix does go back to the mortuary to see her body. I did fit that location in, but it is the famous opening of that game, and you are immediately greeted by Morte, or Morte. I don't remember if that is ever said out loud in that game, but the floating talking skull. I believe this is implied to take place just before the nameless one wakes up, because the way your interaction with Morte ends is he says, "You go out without me. I'm waiting for someone."
Mm-hmm.
So
like if the characters ask Morte to accompany them, the skull declines, mentioning that he's waiting for someone else. He doesn't elaborate further, so that would track in that respect. Yes.
Yeah, it would be. I don't know what else they could be implying, because when he leaves with the nameless one, he goes some other places. I don't think it ever ends up back at the mortuary. So that's like a little Easter egg, a little throwaway if you get the reference, I guess. But I thought he was going to be a much bigger part of it. Like I thought, this is an iconic character. He'll follow you around and be your little exposition fairy or something. But nope. This is the only part of the adventure he is included in.
He still has a stat block though.
Yeah, what are you going to do? You're going to throw down on Morte? What? He's challenge rating 1/4. That's so rude.
Such a mean thing to do.
But yeah, the first dungeon you find yourself in is the opening level of Planescape Torment. You got to get out of the mortuary, and there's fucking skeletons and zombies and shit, and they're going to bonk you on the head. Introduces a major mechanic here. I don't know if you want to talk about that first, or is there any other details of this opening you want to get into? I note that
this is one of those things where I find it where there is this. I think we could get to the twist that gets revealed during this, because the book explicitly says if you get to the crematorium, it's likely the characters are going to die in here, and that leads to the main gimmick of the campaign and how it works, which is the glitch characters.
Yeah. I was going to say that this campaign explicitly opens with all your characters having amnesia, which is normally a huge negative in my book. I try not to be, too much of a dick about it, but that feels amateurish to me. This is the rare case where I think it pays off. I'm not inflexible here, but I started with a frown in my face, and then as I read, my frown got turned upside down. So. Tropes are not necessarily good or bad. They're just tools. But yeah, you wake up with you and your party in the mortuary. You don't remember who you are. And then you start wandering around, and like you said, there's a crematorium. You can walk into a big oven with a kind of silly zombie who has his hand on the lever. This is such a silly idea.
When pulled, the furnace lever causes the torches set into the walls to erupt to gouts of flame. Creatures in the crematorium must make a DC 18 for level 3 characters. Dex saving throw, taking 44 fire damage on a failed save, or half as much on a successful one. 8d10 damage. Delicious. Yeah,
you probably just get incinerated, which, I mean, it's kind of a Looney Tunes thing. I think it's funny. We're going to need to keep note of the player character levels. I think it's very important that they start at level 3 here. We'll note a little bit about this as it goes. But yeah, so at least one of your party members are probably going to get torched. And if they don't know the gimmick of this adventure, that'll probably be a fun, shocking moment, because then, they'll continue looking through the mortuary and then run into that guy who just got incinerated. Right. So tell us about glitch characters.
Yeah. So part of the premise of this whole thing is this idea of a multiversal glitch, and how it manifests in the player characters is that when the characters exist in 3 incarnations, and these incarnations are meant to be the same character, but in 3 different forms. These forms can vary in terms of race, class, other details. There's usually one distinctive feature or item that's shared amongst all of them. They do a great job with the art, showing off a character in wizard, paladin, and druid incarnations, all sharing the same sun motif between them and such. And I like the idea. I think part of the fun about it too is that it allows for some extra lighthearted antics where you as a GM could just kill a character at the end of a session as a punchline, and then next session open up with them just in another incarnation, continuing like nothing happened. I think that's very funny and very fun.
It also suggests solving puzzles by, for example, throwing yourself into some gears to stop them.
like that's what I find really fun about it. There, it's the tricky part is how do you actually get the incarnations to be designed in the first place. The 2 prompts they offer here is you basically have it so that when the character dies for the first time, everyone else at the table helps design another incarnation with them on the spot. And then the other option is to just have characters design the incarnations going in there. I'm kind of curious about what would be the most interesting way to kind of have that twist feel like a twist for the players coming in. But yeah.
Yeah, you really got to tailor it to your play group, right? Because I feel like if I was playing with you or Dan or someone, where I would first of all, you probably both would know about the adventure already because you're nerds. But if you didn't, I would try to spring it on you and then make you do a character sheet at the table because you can do it pretty quickly because you're very knowledgeable. But if it was like newbies or something for whom creating a character sheet is like a week-long stressful event, that maybe I would help ahead of time prepare some kind of thing or try to make it less scary because some people take their character dying very personally, so you gotta know your group.
If I was trying to be really coy about it, I'd be like, let's just workshop a few ideas here, okay, and then take the ideas that we're not taking, just like, here's your incarnations, you get to be all of your ideas. Congratulations.
Yeah. So the big gimmick of this is that your characters, if they die, they just come back in a new form. When this was announced, so they did put a press release saying we have this Planescape product. It has this feature where you have these other versions of your character. I think I was on Spewpunk and I said to Quinn, I bet this is the incarnations of the nameless one from Planescape Torment. Spoilers, it literally is. I'm not saying I'm the biggest brain person who's ever lived, but it is so directly the thing from the video game. I don't know if I'm disappointed or just it would be weird if it wasn't that, but it is indeed that thing from the video game. So if you haven't played it, you play a character who has amnesia. He runs into different versions of himself. So he is the nameless one, and then there's the paranoid incarnation and the practical incarnation, and then the branching choices of the game mean you can do a couple different things. You can fight them, you can join with them, etc., etc. That is the crux of that. And this adventure gives you some choices. It's less involved because the game has no way of knowing what your character is like. You know what I'm saying? It can't anticipate that. But at the end, when you do encounter your incarnations, you get a couple choices how to handle that. But for most of the adventure, it doesn't matter. You can just throw yourself into shit is the idea. Yeah. And then they can have things be more lethal, which I think is fun.
I think another sidebar I really like, honestly, there's this one thing towards the end of the introduction that says don't rush eternity, and it kind of makes it very clear that the scale of time is as such that you don't need to worry about rushing through plot points. If characters get really interested in just some part of Sigil or some gate town, you could spend a month in there and it's not a problem, right? And I think that's kind of neat because whereas with the Spelljammer adventure, it feels more like you're being kind of rushed and railroaded through it because it's meant to be more like a Flash Gordon serial adventure that always moves forward with each session. And this being explicitly not that, I thought was also a nice touch from a design standpoint.
Yeah, I liked that aside as well because it says something like time doesn't pass the same for each person, which has led me to what if you have tea with someone and at the end of it they're 10 years older than you all of a sudden? It's
like you're speaking my language in terms of how to interpret that in action there and just sort of casually have causality problems, but just nobody has an issue with it because they just go with it.
Yeah, that is interesting because urgency can be a very powerful spice in a campaign, in any storytelling, tabletop or otherwise. And I like to use urgency as a tool, but also letting people kind of explore at their own rate also has its advantages. So I think that's really interesting, and using the flexible nature of time in Planescape to kind of facilitate that is very clever. So I liked that aside as well. But I think we're done with the mortuary after
yep.
you escape. I don't think you ever go back. You never see Morte again, but you emerge into the city, and then there's kind of a free roam. There's an open world section, which eventually gets interrupted by the cops. Is there anything we want to talk about before we get to the Popo?
Oh, the harmonium officers and such?
Yeah.
I mean, again, what I like about it is, again, it just opens things up, lets people explore. You have the basic Sigil encounters. I think one of the funnier bits in there is the 3 arguments one, where you have the 3 different factions arguing, and it gives you 3 options where to go in there. I'm just that. I think that's one of those encounters that kind of makes sense to have the players go through as a way to introduce the philosophies angle of stuff, introduce the factions that might tie to the different gate towns kind of in a loose way, and then even present the whole discussing the philosophy stuff before the Popo show up and and drag you off.
Yeah, it's interesting because this is not a faction-based adventure. Like, you don't need to engage with any of the politics going on in the city. You're going to leave the city for the majority of the adventure, which is fine.
Yeah, it's Final Fantasy VII in that respect, right? You're in the city in the opening, and then you just go out to the world for a while.
Yeah, but it's interesting because I wonder if from a behind the scenes perspective, they're like, oh, this is going to be a lot. People are going to feel overwhelmed having to talk about existentialism and stuff. But we have to include it. It's part of it. So yeah, once you leave, you can encounter some people arguing politics in the street. You can agree with some of them or none of them, and then leave. Like it doesn't really matter. But yeah, I can see why they did that, where you get some of the iconic flavor, and then they're going to take you to some other places. So after that, there's also what was the other encounter? The Society of Sensation person can come up.
Yes,
to you.
Right, the Society of Sensation Muse, and you have the Sensory Stone stuff there. So I think like those are the two main encounters they have like detailed outside of just general exploration. And it's just like let the players go, and then once you're ready to continue the adventures, pull out the cop card, just
yeah. And basically the book says like once there's a lull and your players having fun, just like have some fucking jackboots show up.
Open up some police! And they kick down the door while you're just vibing in the sensory area.
Yeah, the knock, 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 FBI! Kicks the door
FBI!
But yeah, so you start getting taken away by the Harmonium, who are like the fucking Stasi of Sigil. But before you are taken to anywhere of consequence, one of the officers reveals themselves as a glamoured spy who frees you. This is an interesting kind of thing you could expand on, right? The way this is written is like you get arrested, but before you're processed anywhere, you escape, and then it never really comes back up. Like you just go on a different adventure. But you could, for whatever reason, have a whole thing where you get taken to a jail cell and have to plan your escape or go to court or whatever. Because the thing you're in trouble for technically is being a glitch, which I guess is a crime. But then, yeah, there aren't any. That's not a storyline that's going to keep going. But I could see myself expanding on it because your player, you can never say how your players are going to interact. But if I said like, "Yo, here's the key to your handcuffs," I could definitely see Dan being like, "Oh, this is a trick." They're trying to get me to
I want to stand trial. I will argue my way out of this situation.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's like, well, fuck. I guess you're going to jail then. But yeah,
and I could picture the agent like disguising as a fellow prisoner and then proposing a jailbreak, and then it doesn't work. Then they have to impose as like the judge, and the judge decides to let them off. Like, actually, I think this is a mistrial. We need to have another go at it. It's like, damn it, Dan.
Yeah, that's the kind of shenanigans that happen when your players come up with ideas. But this spy, who once again doesn't seem like that major of a character, they actually have a cool gimmick where they have a bunch of different identities that don't know each other. Which I think is pretty cool. But they just tell you that like, oh, hey, my boss wants to talk to you. Come with me. And then you have to go through the under sigil, which is like, the slums or whatever, to get to the iconic casino that we discussed at the beginning. We're about to get to the actual meat of this thing. But on the way there, you run into the Cakers, which is this fucking comedy gang. This is like The Warriors, that classic film where all the gangs have like themes. This is the people who think the universe is a cake. This whole thing is so silly.
There's a powerful line that one of the paragraphs just opens with the line, "The Cakers have eaten the cursed cake." 100%, no notes. That's how you open a paragraph.
Yeah, this whole thing, I've already said this, but this is such a Dice Funk ass detour where it's just like all these people are obsessed with cake, and if they offer you cake, if you refuse, they attack you for the insult, but if you eat the cake, it's cursed and you die in 1d4 hours. It's not even fucking around.
There's no save, just like whatever. I also like the unnecessary detail that the Cakers have 2 stale baguettes in their inventory if you loot the corpses. And just like, perfect.
Yeah. This whole thing is so silly.
It's like, I like how it's so frightening but so stupid. I also note that the stuffed rat mentioned earlier, there's the we us thing that goes on in there that you're talking about that references stuff there.
Yeah, the rat uses the pronoun we and us when referring to itself, which I think is a reference to that many is one character. But it says the rodent meets your gaze. You hear a low voice in your mind. Do what you must. It says we have already won. So stupid.
We ate the whole thing.
I ate the whole plate. This ridiculous.
The whole plate.
But yeah, the cake is cursed. These people are ridiculous, but also in our universe, in our Dice Funk universe, kind of right about the layers of reality, which is very funny. This is all just kind of a comedy aside before you get to the casino. Is there anything you want to add about the fucking cakers? When I first read this, I was like, this might be a little too silly. Like, I'm kind of rolling my eyes, but it's honestly grown on me in the last 24 hours.
Oh, I love the cakers. Every bit of it. The art's great. What I like about it is that there's lots of things in this book that are designed to make you kill all of your characters at some point pretty early on.
Yeah.
And just to force them to kind of glitch around and stuff like that. And I like that because you could play this in many different tones and such. You could go more Dark Souls with the vibe, or you can go very just matter of fact about it and more comedic. And it all can work depending on the vibe you want to go with. So I think that's all very fun. But yeah, let's go spin Fortune's wheel, shall we?
Yeah, I was gonna say that the dying in 1d4 hours is like with no save is such an intense punishment that it wouldn't fit in anything but this glitch campaign. So, but it works perfectly here. So
yeah. I like the invitation that allows for just be a Sierra game, okay? Just a character does something wrong, kill them outright. Who cares, right? But you could be as gruesome or as silly. Love it. Like, again, no notes. It's a very fun thing to play around in.
All right, so we reach Fortune's Wheel, the casino. There's a long introduction of its, ambiance and some minor characters milling around. This is the point where that Shadow Kai spy we spoke of earlier kind of leaves. I don't know if I think there's one mention at the end that you can look for if you want, but that is something to note there. And then there's a lot of little details, like there's a dragon here who has a bunch of debt that I thought was fun. There's the various games you can play. They flesh this thing out because you will be back here actually near the end of the adventure. So this is a much more complex kind of setting than when we did the one shot in the casino or when we went there in Valentine. There's one part I definitely want to talk about, but before we get there, is there anything you want to add before we talk about Vecna?
No, not extensively. One of the things I found particularly funny as a detail about Fortune's Wheel, I think this is in the first book, is one of the encounters you could have is a cheery drider comes up and gives you a pamphlet about Lulth, and just like the phrase cheery drider made me think of, what was it, Gwendolyn from season 2, the drider that I just murdered with Elias in 2 rounds.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of this is playing off of Vegas stereotypes. So the evangelicals who are turn away from sin, and the thing we've referenced before. And in Vegas there is the Elvis impersonators. It's a whole thing. Here there are fucking Vecna impersonators.
Vecna impersonators. I'm just
the classic lich villain from early D&D, and there's a great illustration of him doing some kind of fucking dance move. This is so silly.
So my idea for this is that we'll just run with it and just have Vecna sightings, just the different versions of Vecna. It's oh man, I saw Vecna eating a cheeseburger around the corner. It's just
yeah. So the way this is structured is there's a couple hours that you can do, and there's some timed events, with the third timed event being the appearance of the character on the cover of the book, Shemeshka. Fuck me.
I think is what.
Yeah, pronunciation strikes again. But the first 2 timed events are the doppelgangers, who are the Vecna impersonators pickpocketing people, and then there's the dragon who has run up this tab that you can intervene with. I found those both really good because some other stuff is like, oh, you can play the slots or you can roll to play cards or whatever. Well, that's fine. That's what we did on the show. But these are very personality filled. I like. Also, there's the Nothics, which are those creatures from the Monster Manual, very underused. That man, the security room, I thought was very funny. We had to deal with casino security in season 4, and it's a hard thing to do because so many magics exist that it's like theoretically anything you try to do should be able to be witnessed or stopped by security, but you also want the players to have space to be fun. It's hard to kind of role play in that space. So some guidance there is good for me. I like that detail. But there's a lot of that stuff. Just like, oh, there's this weird guy walking around. What's up here? What kind of people are the guards? Oh, Mezzoloths. That's interesting. Stuff like that.
Why does that slot machine have eyes and a big old smile? Right?
Yeah. Was he created like that? What's up with that?
What's it? That guy? It's a. Like you said, there's plenty of stuff. I also like the timed events concept because again, it's a clever idea to have like a little play area, but not get people to get too lost in it for the time being. And I think it's a well-designed area for both openness and also proper railroading to get to Shemeshka and her dealings with things.
Yep. So once you've had 3 hours in the casino, Shemeshka arrives. This is the most important NPC really of the campaign. The way she's introduced is kind of intimidating for a DM because it's like, oh, she has the surface level of like calm and powerful charisma, but then like an undertone of like sinisterness, and it's like, bitch, who do you think am I fucking Tom Cruise over here? You want me to do what kind of acting do you want me to do?
In conversation, she's composed and cordial, exuding confidence and sophistication without appearing pretentious or insincere. I'm like, this is just a fucking prompt for Brendan Lee Mulligan on Make Some Noise, just.
It's a lot to give a DM to just suddenly be like, okay, here's a graduate level fucking acting seminar or whatever. But it is important because her whole thing is the kind of crux of the adventure, right? So she tells you that she can help you solve the glitching problem, your missing memories, which are presumably the driving force of your characters because they don't have a backstory they're aware of. And she says, I'll fix all your shit. Just go find this Modron. The audience probably knows Modron. They're the little robots. The one she's looking for is called R04M, which looks like the word Rome when it's written out. It's fun. And so basically your quest is to find Rome. But this begins like a nesting series of quests that we're going to get into. But it's like, okay, what are we doing here? What is the premise of this campaign? Well, we got to get our memories back. Why do we have to get our memories back? Because we're glitching. Why are we glitching? We don't know. So what do we got to do? We got to help this lady. Why do we got to help this lady? She needs a robot. It's like this quest within a quest within a quest within a quest. That kind of design can be frustrating for players. I've definitely found situations where the players will look at each other and be like, why are we doing this? How does this benefit me? So I usually try to do more direct scripting, I guess you would call it. Like, you want A, so go get A, rather than you want A, so get B, so you can get C, so you can get A, because that gets confusing. I think this mostly works because of something we're about to get to. But I will say, like, when I first realized, like, I was getting a quest about a quest about a quest, I was a little hesitant. I was like, this can get out of hand quickly. But anything about Shemeshka from you before we go looking for this robot?
No, I mean, let me go all the way back down to the bottom of this section here. I mean, it does it basically does a good job of just sort of telling the GM, like, here's what's going on, here's what matters. Like, if the players doubt the intentions in there, it's fine. It makes it clear that this is all like a distraction for things happening in the background. But like you said, it's like the players get dropped into Sigil, and then the adventure needs an excuse to get them out of Sigil. So I guess my thought here would be, if the players rejected the offer, you would need to have some other way to get them to be compelled to leave in some capacity, and that can be a little rough. So I think, like I said, to make the players want to just go to the Outlands first in some way, I think would be a cleaner way to get there before we get to, well, that's what the next chapter is, basically, right? The next part of the adventure.
Yep, chapter 4, Into the Outlands. I will say, knowing the full plot of this story now, it is interesting to me that Shemshaska is like, hey, go do the one thing that'll fuck me over. She could have sent you to do anything else. Why?
Yeah, actually sent you out to do this thing is her undoing, which is funny, but I think it also kind of it's like it's fine, but it's just like it's very funny that it's like it undoes her.
Yeah. So our Arcanoloths are a kind of Yugoloth. This is one of those things where you're about to get a bunch of fucking vocab words for your homework. My experience is that players love demons and they love devils, they love angels. That's all very clear. Modrons as well. But then there's some stuff like Yugoloths that they're like, that's too much. I don't want to learn that word. They're used sparingly. They're the guards in the casino where Yugoloths and Shemshaska is, but that is kind of the end of the Yugoloths. I don't think there are any. Are there any in the actual the Planar Parade, the name of the monster manual? I'd have to look, but I don't think so.
I think the Planar Parade, I think the only like named specific NPC is Shemeshka, I think, in there. Everything else is just references to like just general races and stuff, but she's the only one that's called out. And then like the faction agents are close, but not really. Like Shemeshka is the only like named person in there. Yeah.
All right, so it's time to leave Sigil and go into the Outlands, the neutral plane, where almost the whole rest of the adventure is going to take place. We're going to return to the casino at the end, but like I was, not unpleasantly surprised. I was like, oh, we're really going somewhere else, and it's big. It's a whole plane, so we're going to need a ride. What kind of vehicle do the players get? Like if you read, Descent into Avernus, that was like the recent big adventure that led into Baldur's Gate 3. There was a whole section about your fucking Mad Max Hell car. What do they got for us this time?
A walking castle.
We're on our Baba Yaga shit. We Baba Yagaing. Right. Yeah. Does it like, mention how you get into the walking castle? I'm trying to remember.
So basically, here's how it works. So you go into a nameless ruin in the Outlands. Creatures can follow the tracks towards the forest. A person who succeeds at a check sees that there's basically you're following some weird tracks, and then that leads you to the walking castle, and then inside the castle, you get your big ride. You also get one of the main MacGuffins for the campaign, the Mosaic Mimir.
Yeah, this is what I thought Morte was going to be. You eventually get your Morte, but it's not Morte. It's a different guy.
Yeah, and like the thing about it is that this particular Mimir is the thing that's like the campaign is built around. Like that's the actual crust of the campaign is this Mimir, which will help you find Rome. But in order to do it, you gotta finish it. You gotta finish its Wikipedia entries.
You really do
on the 7 different gate towns.
Yeah, it's such a good idea because you want to do a tour of the towns, but like what compel you to be so thorough? And it's like, yeah, there's this skull who needs all his data back. I don't know, it's a little MacGuffin-y, it's a little fetch questy, but it really worked for me because then it also gives you a framework to let the players choose the order of events, which is very fun.
Right. That's what I like the most about it, because chapters 5 through 12 in the book can be done basically in any order, because it's just you're touring around and trying to figure out information, do things, and as you're doing it, like you're just advancing time forward slowly. I will say that among my favorite encounters in this entire section is in chapter 12. We'll get there, but like I like the Mimir restoration tracker handout.
Yes, I was going to say there's a little worksheet. Why is there a worksheet in this book?
There's a worksheet, and it tilts his hand slightly by having an accurate / skewed note there.
Yeah, that's got to come up. Yeah, so you have to take this skull you find in a walking castle. God, I love Planescape. On a tour to all these towns, and then fill out this little questionnaire, and you can do it wrong if you want. So that's why it's gonna come up. I was curious, like, how much is that actually gonna matter? It kind of does. But yeah. As far as taking the castle, there's some bad guys in there. Is there anything you want to talk about the bad guys you got to kill on the way to having your own walking castle?
I didn't have any particular notes because I was too enraptured by chapters 5 through 12 that I forgot about the people you have to fuck up to get the castle.
Yeah, they're kind of just generic bad guys who want the castle for themselves, and fair enough. I would also want a walking castle, but it is. Yeah, it's a pretty standard, get your own ship kind of thing. So I don't hold that against them. But yeah, the Mosaic Mimir you get says, I'm missing data for these 7 locations. And if you restore this data, for some reason, will be able to tell you where Rome, the missing Mojon, is. So that's your quest. 34 pages in, you get your quest.
34 pages in. Yeah, for sure. It's now, well, this is even more like Final Fantasy VII, right? You do all this stuff in fucking Midgard, then you leave it like, oh, now the actual game begins on disc 2, you know?
Yeah. So at this point, like I said at the beginning, when I saw that there was like amnesia, I was like a little like, and then I saw there was like nested quest within a quest within a quest. I was like, this hesitancy, some trepidation. And then we get to this big open world part, and I could feel my heart grow 3 sizes because it's a very fun structure, and it was very inspiring. Like literally, I don't even mean that like in a generic, like I think it's good. Like I was literally inspired to like, oh, I want to do this. I want to do something
No. You and I alike, right? Because it basically is like, how do you do a campaign like this and not make it like, because I'm reminded of the Street Chase section of Dragon's Heist, where you have all these locations throughout Waterdeep you're going through, but it's a rigid structure that depends on what season the campaign is in. It just didn't feel like you really like felt the city through that. And this is not meant to be the same as that, but it makes sense if you're going out with Outlands. Let the players just kind of go about it as they want,
Yeah.
And so which of chapters 5 through 11 do you want to do them in order? Is there one you want to tap on first, or
Yeah, I think it'd be easiest to do them in order. I think they're alphabetical.
They are.
Each one has kind of a very simple quest on paper. So like, let's just, for the example, the first one, you go to Automata, which is the gate town outside of the plane of law. Mechanus is how many syllables can a word have? And basically the little quest you get there is like, if you want to bring your Mimir to the gate, that's what you have to do specifically, is like sync your skull with the gates that are in each town. You need to help the basically the cops, the people in charge, because they're all law perverts. They love order.
They're super law pervert for sure. Yes.
Yeah. You need to find an agent of chaos who's stolen a book, and you can kind of approach that in a number of ways. You can try, track someone there. You can. I'm trying to think of what other suggestions it gives you how to find the hideout. There's just rolls. Do a sneak, do some kind of knowledge check, and then you find the person. You can bring them in dead or alive. You can let them go. You can, it kind of lets you figure out how you want that, and that's how you get permission to sync with the gate. And that's the basic structure of all 7 of these, is like you need to get to the gate, and then the kind of world conspires to make you do a little quest first. I think we're going to talk about I think a fun aversion or like a twist on that, but that's how it is. What do you think about the specific one?
So I'll say about the specific one is that it actually had a Shard Point episode wrapped up in it, effectively. I had an idea for like a weird hyper bureaucratic, like dealing with tedium thing for a Shard Point episode. And when you try to access the gate at Automata, the way that it describes what it takes to actually access the gate is so funny in my head. It takes 4d12 hours of standing in line, then then you got to fill a stack of forms over the course of 1d4 days. It requires a check to do correctly.
Yeah.
So it's just like it's just like the idea of the idea of the tedium, the bureaucracy of Automata. It's just a great way of like expressing the mechanical, rigid nature of it all, and just it's very fun. And then the fact that that's the reason why you get pulled into doing the quest. I think Automata makes a lot of sense for the first place to go, because you're dealing with the Modron and all these things. So I think it's incidental that alphabetically it comes up first, but it's a really good, I think, first step to getting the idea, the vibe of the campaign.
Yeah, because basically what you're doing is trying to find someone and either fight them or talk to them, which are kind of the basic D&D actions. I found the page where it gives you suggestions of how to find them. One is just search with a survival check, which is a high DC because you're kind of just wandering around aimlessly. And the other one is to stake out a place where they're known to go and then stealthily follow someone. That's the lower DC of 14. Or you could try to intimidate them, and that's a DC of 16. So basically, there's a variety of different approaches with different difficulties. I think it's a really clever way to design it. I really like all that. And the character that you're looking for is just like, this place is too lawful, I want chaos, which is pretty basic. It's not like a deep, rich vein there. It does raise a little bit of questions. If you love chaos so much, why don't you go to the chaos place? But maybe you just want to be a contrarian. That kind of highlights for me something that's different from just using Mechanus. So like in season 6, if I wanted to have a Modron adventure, I would have said you're in Sigil and you take a portal to Mechanus. Now you're in Mechanus. It's a world of gears and clockwork mechanisms and robots and stuff. But by doing Automata, the city at the portal, it's still more grounded. There's like a tavern. There's people hanging out. Right. There's Githzerai, the yellow. People actually probably know the GIF a lot more now because Baldur's Gate 3 was such a big hit.
Yep.
That used to be, I feel, more obscure.
Yeah, but like you have the ability to have the interaction between all these different things within the grounding of the flavor of Mechanus in Automata. And that's kind of like a running theme with the gate towns and how they feel. It's like, here's a way to get a flavor of this particular outer plane, but without having to go whole hog in there and be entirely different.
Yeah. One little twist to throw in here is that the person's hideout is in a place called the Inverse, which is on the bottom of the town, and the gravity is reversed, so you walk along the ceiling, which in practice is just flavor. Like there's no, like if you're playing on graph paper, there's no like you're not going to glue your miniatures to the bottom of it or something. That's it's just for your mind's eye. But that's a fun little detail. And then you find this person. You can get a gold reward because there's 2 big gambling sections in this adventure. I think money actually is more interesting than it usually is for me. Mm-hmm. Tracking money in D&D is always kind of annoying. The economy is very easy to game if you know what you're doing. Like power gamers are always just like, all you have to do is do this, this, and this, and then you're so powerful or whatever. So this is like a rare instance in which if my players like really wanted to take money seriously, I think taking this person alive gets you like twice the reward. And I think that's actually an interesting choice as opposed to just looting every dead body you see, which is not that interesting to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. But that's pretty much all I can really say. Like you hit on a lot of the fun, like little details about the Inverse, and also just like I said, money actually feeling more meaningful because you can even use money to just buy where the person you're hunting down where they are, and it's just like cool. Like it just that's an option. You can pass 3 different different types of skill checks, or just pay money, whatever you want.
Yeah, it was very flexible. The next one alphabetically is Cursed, the gate town of Carcerai, the prison plane where season 3 ends. That was a season about a prison inside of a prison, so themes are what they are. This is also my favorite twist on the mission because all 7 gate towns you got to bring the skull to the gate. That's all you got to do. But there's always some fucking yahoo who comes up to you and is like, "Oh, you want to sync with the gate? First, help me find my jelly beans or whatever." But this is the rare instance you can just walk up to the gate. No one stops you. But there's a reason for that. What's the twist here?
Oh shoot. Okay. I don't have my homework for here. Shit. I think. Oh gosh. I'm sorry. I forgot what the twist is here. I'm trying to look through it to pick it up here.
You can walk right into town, sync with the gate, but then when you try to leave, you cannot.
Because you're right. Because you're basically trapped in there.
Yep, you're in prison. So this is actually not a quest to the gate; it's a quest out of town.
Right, you're right, because that's kind of one of the things about just Cursed in general, right? Is that leaving it is the hard part.
Yeah, it's also mentioned that the portal to Carcerai itself is a two-way portal, but no one knows that. Everyone assumes it's one way, which is very funny to me, because everyone just has learned helplessness, right, from the conditions of prison.
But to your point though, like it is a really kind of great twist to have at least one town where like the inverse is. And so like if people come here very experienced, they'll be like, wait, what? And then have to deal with their consequences.
I think especially if you did this one later, that would be very fun because you got a little monotony could set in where you're like, all right, where's the fuckhole who wants us to sort their cabbages or whatever?
I walk up to the gate. Who's gonna stop me? No one.
Yeah.
What
do you think of that, bitch?
Your mirror's like, that's some yummy information. Thanks, bro Siflo. Let's move on to the next one. That's the voice.
But yeah, so the actual quest is to get out of town, and the way this works is you run into a father and son. The son is a ghost, I believe, is what's going on here, and they're trying to let the escape from the prison so that the petitioner. We haven't actually talked about petitioners, but like so that they can move on. But they're being chased by the Mercy Killers. So this actually brings in a faction into one of these storylines, which I really like. I'm a big fan of the factions, but they're background elements for a lot of this adventure. So this is a great place to bring it in, especially if the players are invested. Like if one of them decided that, oh, I'm a Dustman or whatever, and then they could have some kind of philosophical argument. But petitioners are a thing from the original Planescape that basically never get brought up to the point where I wasn't even sure if they were canon anymore. But it's kind of when you die and you go to the afterlife, you're like a ghost, but not quite a ghost. You have like a kind of second life, if that makes sense. Like you're still kind of you, and the book mentions that like if you keep dying, you get less and less like yourself. But even it's like your idealized self, right? Like you don't actually have to look like you were when you were alive. It's all very conceptual. Like a lot of things in this setting, it's all negotiable, which I find is really interesting. But basically you find this father and son, and they say, we know the tunnel out of town will take you there, but people are chasing us. And so you get to decide how to deal with that. You can just fuck up all these Mercy Killers or stealth or anything else. What is this? Deception to convince the Mercy Killers that Valder is dead. Stuff like that. Options. There's also some Otyugs. Love to see an Otyug.
I like the way that it sets up options for how to go about these things nice and easy. It makes it, I think it helps also spark, like, if the players want to go to, they want to try to put in a fourth way and break the rules of the rule of three, you might have enough material to kind of go around that.
Yeah. So I just want to read here. Felix died in an accident in Sigil several years ago when he manifested as a petitioner who took the form he had in life. However, his body, while still corporeal, is semi-transparent like a ghost. So he's like a ghost, but not a ghost because we're in silly land here. He wants to move on to Mount Celestia. He's good-natured but cautious and indecisive. So this is like your little ghost friend you got to help. It's funny. I think we're going to talk about Celestia a little later, and I had some Dice Funk thoughts there, but like that's the introduction to this concept of petitioners, which isn't actually there was one previous mention in the casino. There was a hag who was trying to win souls, which reminded me, the soul economy was like a driving force of our season, and like it comes up here, like souls are like traded. There's oh my god, we're gonna have to talk about they play baseball for souls later. Fuck, I just you're jumping ahead of me here. Yeah, sorry, I was going to spend an entire tangent on this fucking thing here. We'll table it. Okay. All right. The next one is Mount Celestia, the lawful good. It's basically heaven. They don't use the word heaven, I guess, because they don't want Christians to be mad at them. But yeah, it's heaven. When you arrive, there are a bunch of lantern archons. I believe this is how episode 1 of season 6 started, right? They were climbing the stairs in Mount Celestia, and there was lantern archons. It was a Slod that was trying to harvest them, as opposed to what's going on here. Do you want to set up this little mission? There's a little bit of trouble in paradise, or viper in the garden, as it says.
Right, because this takes place in Excelsior, to be explicit. Like it's the gate town there. So let me go ahead and pull this up here. effectively you are approached by a hound. Is it Archon? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, Archon, it's Greek for leader, is what that word means. I believe I used that as the paramilitary company in season 4 was called Archon, which is a little confusing because Archons are also a thing in D&D, but it was for the religious symbolism because in Gnosticism, the kind of beings that serve the false demiurge are called Archons. So, sorry, it's a roundabout way of answering your question, but yeah, they're otherworldly beings, but the word literally means leader, I believe.
Yeah, so basically there's people who are disappearing from Excelsior for disappearing from the town. They suspect somebody named Sincerity, and they basically kind of want your help to kind of figure out what's going on in that whole matter.
Yeah. One thing I like about these 7 little quests is that they're all kind of archetypical. So there's the find the bad guy, escape from town, and interrogate the suspect are 3 really nice specific things. Cause sometimes the bad guy is in the wind, you got to find them. Sometimes you have the bad guy, but you can't convict them. It's it's a very different take on something that could be very similar, right? Every single one of these could be there's a bad guy, get him. That's that's many D&D quests boil down to get the bad guy, but there are many different ways to get the bad guy, and I think this one's pretty clever.
I do like the fact that in this whole thing that the conclusion does even note how it concludes either when the character confesses to their crimes or your investigation reaches a dead end. It's it can just reach a dead end and just moves on, which I actually kind of like as a note in there, honestly. The fact that they can allow you to have a fail state but still move on is really nice.
Yeah, you just get more, but you get more benefits. If the characters get Sincerity to confess, the Hound Archon seeks them out and gives them a Lantern of Revealing. So it's a bonus, but yeah, it's fail forward kind of stuff where it's hey, you didn't get them this time, but also you're not a detective, so I guess you're gonna move on. It's fine.
Yeah, and so it's basically it's just you have these people who've gone missing. You could find an individual who's missing, get evidence from them. You could question Sincerity. You could go sneak around her home, I believe. You have there's lots of different ways to go about it, which again is just a credit to the design of the campaign. It's archetypal prompts, but then allowing for a handful of different ways to go around it or fail at it and then still move forward.
Yep. And so the crux of this whole crime spree is Sincerity is capturing souls to give to a hag. I mean, literally the subsection in the book is called the soul trade, which is, there's many times in season 6 where I say, here's an aside about, I think I would say the soul economy. It's very gratifying to see other people follow same lines of logic that I arrived at, so I like that a lot. It's very similar to what happens in my Celestia bit there. But yeah, eventually you either bust Sincerity or leave, which is it's pretty good. And then we go to Fawnell. Are you ready to talk about talking animals?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Fawnell is interesting because one of its main features is that the actual gate to the Beastland is this pond. And so if animals drink from it, they get awakened effectively on the spot there. And if you were to jump into the water, that's the actual passage into the Beastland itself there. And I believe the main thing that one of the things that interrupts you while you're in the Beastlands is a pack of poachers, null poachers, basically.
Yeah, so they're called the Vile Hunt, which is a play on the Wild Hunt. I thought that was pretty clever, a little corny, but clever. And then there's these 3 factions of talking animals who have different relations to the Vile Hunt. And this is another case where if you boil it down, there's some bad guys, get them. But there's different ways to approach it because there's I think the way the book basically poses it is that there's herbivores, carnivores, and flying animals. The 3 types of animals.
Yep, there's no other types of animals. There's we have all. Well, again, first and foremost, you can't be 4 types of animals. Rule 3.
Yeah.
Omnivores are not allowed, I guess.
But yeah, so you basically need to solve the vile hunt problem by talking to these animals, and there's little sections where it tells you what each of the animals know and what their opinions is. This is a very it's social quest, which is fun. We like to do this on Dice Funk where it's mostly talking, which is funny because it's animals who normally can't talk. But it's all kind of an aside, right? Like as you mentioned, the pool that is the gate to the Beastlands is actually guarded by an Empyrean, which is like a demigod kind of thing. We used one of these in season 6, and it's kind of unrelated to the animal shenanigans. The Guardian attacks any non-beast who lies, refuses to answer, or tries to use the gate without permission. If the characters are honest about why they want to use the gate, Wrath, the name of the Empyrean, allows them to bring them a mirror close to the gate. Like if you just straight up with this guy, it's totally fine, which I think is a fun little twist.
Circumvent. This is one where you can have like the most circumvented thing. You could do this all the way out. You can describe the nulls, and the players can be like, and just walk away if they wanted to.
But if you go through the whole quest with the gnolls and stuff, you get stuff. Let's see, 1,400 gold pieces, a rope of entanglement. You get to see a triceratops, which is kind of its own reward.
I mean, let's be honest here. Yeah, you can. I just like the Triceratops is written right next to treasure that way. It's just really good.
Yeah, this whole section is really interesting because a lot of it seems like pretty optional and flavorful. But I guess this is a good reminder that while you're doing this, several things are happening. One is that you're filling out this worksheet about your observation of the planes, and you can choose to do so accurately or not, and that will come into play later. And the other is you're leveling up a lot. We started at level 3, but I'm trying to remember the exact structure. There's a little chart here.
So the structure is for chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4. For each of those chapters, you go up a level. So by the time you get out to start exploring the Outlands, that's chapter 5 effectively, you are already at level 6 at that point. And then when you're doing the different gate towns, for every 2 gate towns cleared, you gain a level. So for chapters 5 through 12, you go from level 6 to 9, which is kind of fun to have it structured that way.
Yeah, so your leveling slows down effectively, but it's going to become important later. In fact, on Spewpunk, when we read the press release about this, I guessed something about the leveling that is 100% true, which I found is very funny. I want it on record that I was right. It's very petty, but it's true.
Listen, you have every right to be petty here. So,
I mean, sometimes it's like, I call something because I'm being cynical. I'm like, I bet they're gonna do this because they're hacks. They're losers. But sometimes I guess it because it's like, that would be cool. It's what I would do, and that's this.
Right. I'm guessing that it had something to do with the fact that it's the more you kind of you're remembering about yourself effectively, or something to that line.
It's because in the press release it says it's an adventure that starts at level 3 and ends at 17, and I was like, I was like, I know what's gonna happen. For
that part there, I'm always a fan of like clean chapter based leveling stuff. I mean, it's one of the things where again, the goal is just as you kind of move through these different towns, you level up as you go along. And speaking about going along, I think the next gate town we have after Faunal is Glorium.
Yep, this is the Norse-inspired gate town outside of Eastgard, which Asgard. I don't know if that's just like a variant spelling or pronunciation, or if there's like some reason they were avoiding the more traditional Asgard. I don't have that in my pocket, but yeah, this is people standing around, drinking and having parties and fun. These are all, I'm imagining all these people wearing the horned helmets that the Minnesota Vikings have, which aren't apparently historically accurate. But the gate that you need to bring the Mimir to is a whirlpool in the middle of a big body of water. The book kind of notes, it's like, the fly spell kind of solves this. I thought that was very funny, where it's like, some players are going to be like, I have boots of water walking, so I don't need a boat. But then, there's some complications. Can I actually get your take on this? Because I was curious about the way this is structured, where you try to go to the gate, either on a boat or, with some kind of spell, and then some sea serpents come out. These are, your classic Midgar serpents. We talked about Final Fantasy VII a lot. this episode, but where's Sephiroth to impale the Midgar serpent? And then there's like a second quest, and I'm trying to figure out what is the intrinsic motivation of your characters to participate in this second part. Some people just like adventure and will do it. I'm just curious, did you see a mechanism to encourage it? Because it seems to me like if you take the boat to the portal, you synchronize your mirror, and you could just leave.
Right, because you're talking about the Grakenok whole thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because right, so I'm trying to figure out when does it even begin suggesting out there, right? Because you have the whirlwind spotted, which and it's just the only way I could think of is that the reason why they're going there is because the boat you're on is just going to there, and they're kind of doing it as a detour to go to the whirlwind, right?
Well, my read of this, it says, whether on the courier, the name of the boat, or back on shore, blah, 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 Bacall was the captain of the boat. Bacall shares his concern with the characters and asks, I hit my microphone. Bacall shares his concern with the characters and asks them to come with him to meet Tears of Bonebreaker.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And I'm just curious, from just a structural perspective, is there any mechanism to stop your characters from going, no thanks, and leaving? I guess it's, if that's their adventure, that's their adventure. Just usually there's a reason for the characters to stick around.
Yeah, it's because I think it comes down to standpoint there. You just have to say, listen, it's worth it if you do it. Because it says right there, it leaves choice of the characters. If the characters agree, and I think if they don't, they just leave. I guess the way I would kind of frame this mechanically is that, it kind of, I sort of look at this as when it comes to the homework assignment of the campaign, writing the descriptions of the different gate towns and stuff like that. I almost like to think of it as the more that a player engages with the town, the gate town, the more accurate information they could have about what it is.
Oh, yeah.
That's sort of the general way I kind of look at how this is structured, is because the premise is that you want to have as accurate of a description of these things, because the impetus of the players might be that the more accurate information the Mimir has, the more likely you're going to find Rome, or the more easily you'll find Rome and stuff like that. And so I think that's what it comes down to, because the descriptions aren't about the planes. They're not about the gates. They're about the gate towns themselves. And that's kind of what it comes down to. So I think the reason why players would want to go forward with that second part inside of Glorium is because doing so, meeting the leader in Grakenok, allows you to have a more accurate description of it. I think that's the same thing with Faunal, right? If you go into Faunal and just leave, then you have just a fleeting glimpse of what's going on. So your description might be incomplete or skewed if the players just go on their assumptions of it. So it's a way of rewarding investing into the world itself as you go along. So that's the best answer I can give about why a player would want to do it. But the question is, are the players aware of that benefit? I'd have to double check back in chapter 4 or so when we talk about when we look at the Mimir, and basically thinking is the accuracy conveyed as important for the Mimir? And if so, I think that kind of closes that loop.
Yeah, no, that's one of those things where it's from a game design perspective, you're it's obvious. I gave you a worksheet, but right. Sometimes it just slips your mind because you don't have the exact train of thought that the game designer has. But that's a clean answer. Is you are literally trying to get an accurate write up here for something that's going to happen later. So there's these sea serpents. I was a little disappointed that they use an existing stat block. One of my favorite things is monster manuals. I love seeing new monsters and their unique movements, but I think these are just giant crocodiles statistically. A little disappointing. They're called whirlpool worms.
Yes.
It's fun. I like the art on it. It's notable the boat is a giant bird. It's literally Odin's crow, but with fucking seats on it. It's a little body horror.
Yeah. There's a lot of fun things about Gloria, but one thing we passed by was the contest that you could do in there. So you have arm wrestling, goat milking, pin finger, and flyting, FLYTING, which I'm just great.
Yes. For those who don't know, flighting is a Norse battle rap. It's like the end of 8 Mile, where you tell someone their mom is stanky to win a competition. It's very good. This whole thing is very nice, very fleshed out. Yeah, so if you agree to go to Grakenok to save the barriers, we'll talk about barriers in the monster manual, but save them from some guys, and if you do more damage than anyone else, this is a fun mechanic. You get the glory of the kill, and you get the big tooth, and you can bring it back, and everyone throws you a big party. So yeah, it incentivizes specifically not just winning, but trying to do the most damage, which I thought was very fun.
Mm-hmm. That's a very Dan prompt to give, you know?
Yeah, I like that a lot. It's one of those things where, like, usually the point of combat is just to win, but sometimes throwing in a little twist can make an encounter more memorable. So that's very fun. And you can get some items. A wide-brimmed hat of disguise is very on flavor because Odin, wore a big hat and often traveled in disguise. That feels like a specific Norse reference. Anything else here? This is a really good adventure.
I think it's a fun adventure overall. I mean, like, it's one of those. It's an area where, like, again, it's like you look at it as like the good-hearted competition, kind of digging into a little bit of sort of this Norse flavored mythology and stuff. And I think that again, it heads on another sort of style of sub-adventure, like little campaign arc you'd have, where like, oh, there's a competitive thing, as well as defensive sort of work that you do. And yeah, it's a fun look there. Like you said, the most disappointing thing, honestly, is the fact that the Warworms don't have their own stat blocks. That's a missed opportunity, you know?
Yeah. So I think you've been hearing my tone getting more and more positive as we've been doing this. Like, after some initial trepidation and hesitations, I've just been like, yes, sickos, yes. This next one, Chapter 10, I think is my least favorite. Regis, the gate town outside of Acheron, the Plane of War. This is where Season 5 ended, when you fought the Colonel in the skies above Acheron. But this one, and tell me if I'm missing something, it's basically this town is under siege from an army coming through a portal, and your job is to fight the army until you figure out how they're so good at fighting. And I didn't find the reveal that satisfying. Am I being a hater? What did you get out of Regis? Rigus? R-I-G-U-S.
Okay. I like, yeah, because what you're talking about is the mid-battle deduction checks there. And it's like, I look at this, I'm like, where is the prompt to the player to notice anything unusual there, right? Because, and is there like, unless, I'm trying to remember, there was like a charge given to the players like, hey, help us figure out what's going on here. But I don't know if that's actually given clearly to the players, because then all of a sudden you have the mid-battle deductions there, and then you have the fake, the slots and stuff. Like, yeah, it's like, it's a war encounter type thing, but it's just not particularly special. I forget what the exact twist is. There's a fake, right? There's a fake Lugic that they point out there. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the sergeants who's on your side is actually fake fighting. And if you notice that, you realize it's actually a Slod who has been shapeshifted to replace this guy. And then one of the bad guys has a Slod control gem is the plot. And also it's like, okay, having one guy in your enemy army, is that really giving you such intelligence that you were able to, completely turn the tide of battle? It's all a little, right. I don't know, contrived is the word that comes to mind. I don't want to be too much of a downer, because I realized that partially this is just a change of pace from some of the more social ones to being a war one. It's just like, let's switch it up. This is the big badass battle session, and that's fine. Not everything needs to be a nuanced discussion of existentialism.
What I would probably do to reflavor this is make it a Dynasty Warrior session,
Or are you just mowing down hundreds of guys?
Exactly, just hundreds of guys just mowing down inexplicably, and then like at that point there, you can then make the sergeants actually be relevant, because they're the size of the power is there. But like you said, making the encounter like an actual regular fight. Doing some silly things with it to kind of really embrace the bizarre, this is a big ass war thing, would be a little bit more fun for me, at least, if I was running it.
It's notable, and it says the conclusion. The characters might have pieced together that Lugic was replaced by a Slod spy. If they didn't, Major Kalar notices the control gem. Like if your players are too stupid, an NPC figures it out. Not the sign of the best mystery. I mean, it's hard to do mysteries, right? But yeah, this is one where the writer is just like, listen. Sometimes you got some lunkheads at the table. Sometimes there's some real dipshits, and there's nothing you can do.
Just give them the dimensional shackles if they don't figure it out.
Yeah. So that's my least favorite, but let's see. There's like, two more? So let's move on to Sylvania, the gate town of Arborea, which is the nature one. Not to be confused with the Beastlands, which is animal. This is more, plants and forest. This used to be an elven flavored outer plane. They've shifted a little bit on this. The books, actually, none of these 3 books really touch on the idea that like each of the planes has like an iconic specific species. Like the Eladrin used to be from this plane, but I don't know if that's even canon anymore. They've moved things around a lot. So
for sure,
Sylvania is kind of just like nature and party plane. People are just having a little rave. It's Burning Man out here.
Yeah, I was going to say Burning Man, but maybe less dystopian in some ways.
Probably in a lot of ways. There's I don't think any explicit combat in this one. It's literally, there's a demigod who's really depressed and bringing the vibe down, and your job is to like cheer her up. That's pretty much the whole thing. So it's a social puzzle, basically. You got to find out about her insecurities. I think it's literally what it says.
I just like because it kind of just goes over like Titanic pain. There's like might share the following truths and a quandary about her life. Just like you just try to cheer her up, and then she just becomes a downer every time it starts becoming fun. Just like, why you gotta bring that up?
Yeah. So there's a couple. Fun. There's a couple different party activities you can do. There's a parade, there's a dance, and you're just taking this very powerful person around and trying to cheer them up so they don't become a big problem. As soon as you do that, I think they take you to the well where the gate is, which is normally hidden. I think that's the whole thing, is that like this is another one where you can't just go to the gate. The gate is unknown, so you got to do this specifically so someone will show you the gate. That's it. That's a kind of a break. It's a good contrast. The big war, which is kind of brain dead, and then the only talking, no fighting one.
You go over, just play some skull bocce, you know?
Yeah. So I think that's the last one of these gate towns.
Of the gate towns.
Yeah.
But
yes, this is where we get. So you could tell I was really liking the open world section. I was really impressed with that. My heart was open, and then I turned this page, and I realized this is the best D&D book of all time.
This is so fucking good. Okay. So the title of this section is just Angels in the Outlands. You have my attention.
Yeah, I'm already, this picture, I'm just getting it framed. Are you kidding me? This is so good. This is, I mean, for the audience, anyone who knows in the Discord has probably seen an idea you had for a character, which, I mean, I feel like this is your moment to shine. This is so sketch coded.
So for those that don't know, for season 5, I was trying to brainstorm character ideas before the suggestion to have Conrad join came up, and it was just too good not to let him on. So I had to step down for that season. But I had a baseball character. Funnily enough, like I basically saying like the ancestor for Trayan. Basically, they were named Carmelo. They were a baseball player. I was going to develop an entire baseball league with minor leagues and stuff. And then this motherfucker walks in with fucking Spyball.
Yep. They tweeted it out.
And then Spyball just, it's like, I love how if I was going to do this, the goal would be to describe Spyball for as long as possible without someone just saying, is this just baseball? Because you read, a gigantic flat diamond. It's 3 points marked with squat pedestals, shimmers within a ringed field. I'm like, this is going to be the Dread Gazebo. Someone's going to try to attack the diamond and get killed by a fly out, you know?
There's literally a section here called batting.
You have a quadrone named G041, so goal. So it's the wrong game. There's no goals in Spyball. There's runs.
Yeah.
A D20 is a home run because a natural 20 is a home run, of course. You have the two teams, the Righteous Hands and the Noxious Stampede, and they're fighting over the rights to a singular soul, right? It's a singular soul.
Yes, this is the soul economy coming back. Oh, before we get any further into Spyball, I should say Chapter 12 is like a smattering of things that can happen between gate towns. So
I love it.
Yeah, we've been presenting this basically going from gate town to gate town to gate town in your walking castle. God, I forgot that detail. You have a walking castle as your base. But there's never been any mention of what, if anything happens between them. Like, it kind of feels when you're first reading it like you're teleporting, which isn't ideal. It doesn't give a great sense of place. But no, you can run into a baseball game between the Noxious Stampede and the Righteous Hands. And my heart, I could not believe how good this is.
The Mimmer quote for this is just, if you think you're prepared for the ultimate struggle between good and evil, the deciding contest between all that is righteous and all that is foul, then to you I say, play ball.
Yes. The humor here, we're back in the Cakers, right? This is Cakers shit.
You have the picture of their star player just holding this mace-like thing, and it's just it's just like, oh, it's so good. This section was so funny because you can either join one team or the other as a player, but you can't join both. You can't split the party, or you could choose to not be on either team and instead just help from the bleachers and stuff. And you got the Noxious Stampede, who are just like described as sore losers and insufferable winners.
Yeah, their pitcher is one of the evil elephants we're going to talk about, the Monster Manual, who I really liked. But he shoots fastballs out of his trunk. This is truly Looney Tune hours.
It's like, but like that's the best part. Like the fact that it just embraces Looney Tune hours plays so well. The fact that it's like these evil things fighting up against a Deva and a bunch of Archons, and they're like just doing this sport thing to gain the rights over a soul. I'm just like, oh man, it's just too funny.
Yeah, I'm imagining the kind of D&D player who hates this. They're like, this isn't Drizzt to Erden would never play Spireball. And that's just like, I don't know what to tell you. We don't have the same values. We are fundamentally different people. This is incredible.
I have to spoil the ending because I love it too much. Because basically either the Stampede win or the Righteous Hands win. Sure. If the Stampede win, they're just the most obnoxious. They do brags and celebratory gestures, probably make obscene hand gestures and stuff. They throw trash on the field that they're standing on, kind of energy, and you get an ever-smoking bottle. If the Righteous Hands win, great. But if the characters reveal they help the Righteous Hands from the sidelines in some way, Shariel still awards the chalice, but shamefully notifies the Modron umpire. The angel asks for a rematch in a year, saying cheaters never truly win.
Oh my god, yeah, they're total nerds. They only want to win fair.
and I love the fact that a tie game, the Soul's fate's delayed for another 300 years. Both teams are visibly disappointed.
Yeah, that's so great. I wish, in hindsight, because the season 6 was about the soul economy, I don't really want to repeat that plot point, but I am disappointed I didn't have anyone play a high-stakes sports game for a soul. That would have been sick.
Oh man, well, there's always opportunities for other high stakes sports games. I love Spireball so much, though. It's just it's peak. I like the other encounters I have out here for chapter 12 are fine, but my brain deleted them from my memory once I saw Angels in the Outlands. It was too good.
It's funny you say that, because I was like, in any other adventure, the other kind of big encounters between the gate towns would be highlights, but they're all overshadowed by Spireball. Literally, the next one is about a fucking time dragon. It's like a challenge rating 28 or some shit. It is like the most dope looking fucking worm they've ever conceived of, and I was like, yeah, but he's not a third baseman, so I'm not sure I give a shit.
What's his OPS? Come on. He's a pitcher. What's his ERA? You know?
Yeah.
What's his WOBA?
Yeah, I feel very silly about this, but it's like I want to skim past some of these other ones because they're not as good. But yeah, one of them is a multi-part quest where an adult time dragon comes to you. This is a dragon, obviously, that is wields the power of time somehow. It gives you an item. And then another scene later when you're traveling again, a younger dragon comes to you. I think that's a pretty clever little twist there. And then it's like, the dragon is experiencing this out of order. I mean, this is River Song from Doctor Who. This is literally
pretty much,
what happens there. So that whole quest, and then if you help the dragon escape from the person who's chasing it, you get an item where you can summon the dragon later. That's fun. It would be really cool if it wasn't next to Spyball. So it's not fair. And then there's you meet a grove of the most meat-headed Chad lizards is another one. How did you love the lizard folk competition? I love this illustration.
I love the picture for it. It's so good. It's so funny because we were talking about the Bro Olympics at the end of season 9. I'm like, well, this is just the Bro Olympics energy right here. Just
you come across this bog full of lizards and they're all fucking jacked gym rats, and you can like do competitions with them. And if you do good enough, you impress the god of lizards, who comes out and quote thinks you're amazing. He thinks everyone's amazing.
I like the quote here from the mimir. It's like, what's my secret? Well, I died, but then I started working out and started seeing serious gains.
Yeah, this whole thing is King Badass coded.
Absolutely. Oh yeah.
Planescape just
lizard folk in particular is just a little bit too on the nose there, but just like it's like I said, this adventure is so fun because you can just kind of explore your own pace and kind of linger on some of these areas. So
yeah. So those are like the three main storylines that can happen in between the gate towns are the baseball, the dragon, and the lizards. But chapter 13 puts us back onto the main plot. So we are running long. I mean, I don't mind. I'd talk about this for hours. I love this shit. But if we're going to wrap up the plot here, once you go to all the gate towns, your Mimir says, oh, my data is compiling. I know where Rome, the Modron, is. Did you forget that we're looking for a Modron named Rome? That was my concern.
My concern is Rome the size of a soccer ball? Can I kick him into a goal?
Yeah. But yeah, that was your quest many sessions ago. Literally, like I imagine if you're playing this week to week with your friends, it would have been 2 months since talking about Rome. But you find out where he is, which is at the Spire in the center of the Outlands, upon which the city of Sigil is placed. If you'll recall the structure of that, there's like a big spire, and at the top there is a Taurus, Torus, which is like a ring, that Sonic might collect. But yeah, the Spire itself is the home of the Rilmani, which are an extremely obscure creature. I did have them in season 6, if you'll recall, sweet audience. Nifix wasted a bunch of them because I was using their 2nd edition stats when they are kind of just like people. They're like humans. They're kind of smooth and featureless. I think during the episode someone made the joke that they're the neutral aliens from Futurama. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
I have no strong feelings about that either way, because every alignment has kind of an iconic or representative creature. Like angels are lawful good, demons are chaotic evil, Modron are neutral. They're lawful.
Yeah, lawful. They're lawful. I think they're just lawful, right? Because I think they have issues with good aligned people. They're just lawful. Yeah.
The Modron are lawful. The Rilmani are neutral personified, but they have been given a major overhaul here. If you just Google Rilmani, Rilmani, you're just going to get a picture of kind of just a guy. And if you look in this new monster manual, one of the things I am most impressed with is what they have done here. They have made them kind of living kind of crystal. They specifically remind me of an artist. I'm going to look up his name because he did a lot of Magic the Gathering art before becoming so popular. He was literally more profitable to do his own shit. While I look that up, though, tell the audience about arriving at the Spire and meeting the Rilmani.
You got it here. So, the reason why you're going to the Spire is because that's where Rome went. So you start trying to go there. When you approach, basically, you basically come across this community called Dendratus, I think is what it's called.
Peter Moorbacher is the name of this artist. It's kind of hard to spell, but if you do, you will immediately see what I believe, I don't have any evidence of this, but what I believe is the direct inspiration for the redesign of the Romani. Peter does these something called Angelarium is like his big project. It's a book I believe he's released. I don't know if you're Googling the sketch. I guess I can put his name in the chat for you. Moorbacher, Mohrbacher. But his illustrations all have this. I literally used a Peter Moorbacher painting for the Norn when they showed up in season 6. That's the Norse fates, kind of like there's the Greek fates. There's a similar thing in Norse mythology called the Norn, but they're these like eerie, featureless giant creatures. I don't have any evidence that this is the specific inspiration, but it's really close, and they're much more powerful, this version of the Romani. So we can continue with this. I just wanted to note, this is, for me, one of the biggest shakeups I feel to like the Planescape status quo, is that this creature type has gone from just kind of like boring guys who don't have opinions to like challenge rating level 12 beings of pure crystal death. So challenge rating 17 for the biggest one. Holy shit.
Yeah, and in the manual, the biggest one is depicted as just huge, just like it's wild there. But yeah, so basically the main thing I'm thinking of is the fact that you have a Romani that's looking for Rome as well, and because Rome is deemed to be like this huge multiversal threat. So it's like, after not thinking about Rome for months, all of a sudden you're looking for Rome, and Rome is a problem here, apparently.
Yeah, the players won't know this immediately, but the Romani are looking for Rome to kill him, and once they do that, they're going to kill the players as well. This is something that like the DM knows, the players don't, is that the Romani see all the glitched people as a threat.
My favorite detail about the Romani you deal with is the following line here. She asks if Rome is with the party and gives an "aw shucks" snap of her fingers when it's clear the Modron isn't.
Yeah.
Like the super friendly Romani comes up to you, and like you said, if you aren't careful, you're gonna get caught off guard when we realize they're gonna try to kill you. So
yeah, this is a really compelling to me. I will note that there is a like 2-sentence thing in one of these books, maybe we're coming up on it, where the Norn are mentioned. I don't remember the exact context, but I thought that was interesting because the Norn was something I included, which isn't normally in Dungeons and Dragons, like minotaurs from Greek mythology, giants from Norse mythology, all everyone gets thrown into the pot. I always thought it was weird that was one of the things that wasn't. But if the Romani are now how I was picturing the Norn, I think that's actually really cool. And I also like that they have a kind of incongruous, silly demeanor, because they're like these beings of like extreme power. They're like crystal. They're like they can like stand athwart a mountain, and then they're like, oh shucks.
Yeah.
That's Adventure Time good to me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and then you have Inside the Spire, Desert of Rust, just a little memory from elsewhere.
Yeah, you go on a little dungeon crawl through the Spire. Before we get to Rome, who we're about to find, there's one section here that had me hooting and hollering, which is the Secrets of Eternity. Did this jump out at you?
I need to get to there real quick there.
Yeah, you meet a Baronoloth who you can have share a forbidden secret. The Baronoloth speaks in a language the character doesn't know, but somehow understands. If the character lets the scholar speak for a full minute, the character's mind is flooded with terrible knowledge. And there's a D4 to find out what the terrible knowledge is. And one of those is Dice Funk. This is page 74, bottom left.
Yeah. Are you talking about the entire multiverse being inside an impossibly vast bag of holding?
No, that's 4. The number 1.
Oh yeah. The Spire is made of countless stacked versions of Sigil from past incarnations of the multiverse. Yes, that is. Yeah, of course, that one there.
It's literally the reveal of season 7, which is very funny because I know some people have said that like, oh, it's a little complicated, but it's very funny that a dark secret of Planescape is that it's made of every version of Planescape stacked on top of each other. I don't know what else to say. Dice Funk stays winning.
Yeah, I just thought that. I thought it's Dice Funk in terms of just like it's very silly, but yeah, I get your point there. Gosh, I also just like the Eyes of the Impossible charm there, because there's just a little thing you it's just like
Yeah, if you get the forbidden knowledge, your eyes turn black. You get advantage on persuasion checks to interact with evil creatures. So you become spooky. You become inspookened.
There. Let's see here. I'm double checking. Yeah, the next we have the darkness, and then that's when we find Rome right there. We're dealing with the Dark Weaver.
Yeah, where has Rome been the entire time? They've been captured by Shelob from Lord of the Rings. I found this a little underwhelming. I don't know if we need to linger on it, but basically there's an evil spider, which isn't it's like it's kind of a cliche in video games. I don't know if you know about this, but like just that when a bad video game is like, oh, what are we going to have as enemies? Oh, I guess big spiders. It's just like such a go-to thing. The Dark Weaver isn't completely boring, I guess, but did you find anything here that sparked joy? I was a little disappointed.
Not particularly. I mean, the main thing here is just not necessarily the mild of the contrivance of like kind of showing up when you are able to help Rome. I mean, granted, Rome is roaming around, so one could argue that like Rome just was the next town over or something as you were traveling around, but like it's like. It's a little bit of it's like after some of the highs we have earlier, it's a little bit of a down point, but like not going to be too worried about, because we have we then have to deal with just like just getting out of the Spire and moving on with the rest of the adventure once you get information confirmed from Rome that contradicts other characters and all that fun stuff.
Yep, the second act twist, you save the Modron, and it tells you that Shemshaka, your quest giver, your fixer, was lying the whole time, which you might have been tipped off if you realized her home base was called the Room of Lies, I think. What was it? Do you remember that specific detail? I was like, not hiding it particularly well, homie.
Mm-hmm. I forget what the exact name of it is. It is the House of Liars is what it is.
Yeah, the House of Liars. So yeah, the twist is that Shemshaka didn't send you after her accountant, which I think is the lie she tells.
Shemeshka is a liar. It's like weren't you her accountant? No. What? If you're not her accountant, then who is? She's running a casino. There's got to be an accountant there.
Yep. So at this point, you're given some flexibility about how you return. Presumably you can fart around in Sigil some more if you want. Maybe if you've built up some personal quests and stuff. None of your characters have memories, so there's not like backstory stuff. But you can fuck around until you're ready to trigger the point of no return, which is going back to the casino. There's the high rollers level, the platinum rooms. So there's actually more casino than there was before. You're gonna play some new games. What's your favorite detail of the platinum rooms? I have one that I have to talk. One specific one that came to mind.
Mm-hmm. I just do love the fact that just one of the areas is just called Dungeon Land.
That was mine.
It's just like you just have a name in there, and it's just
So in the casino, your D&D players can play D&D. It's very funny. It's like there's these big crystals that everyone can look at and bet on adventurers across the plains doing D&D stuff. It's like you can imagine that this platinum room is in a crystal in someone else's thing, and so on forever, like the marble at the end of Men in Black.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Dungeon Land is a very funny thing. There's also just like gladiatorial fights, and there's other shit you can do here.
Well, the last detail I think about Dungeon Land is imagine a sports bar, but instead of having a bunch of different sports playing, it's just a bunch of different campaigns, and you're just betting on all of them. It's just fantastic.
So eventually, blah, blah, blah. No need to belabor it. You get to Shemeshka.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Well, she's about to be dead or gone, so it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
This section literally called Fate of the Multiverse. So what is her plan? What's the deal? Why are you glitched? Here everything comes out. This is the final dungeon. This is the final boss. What's up? Actually, there's one more. There's one more section. Yeah. I'm lying. Shemeshka. Right. Shem, she's not the final boss, but you know what I mean.
Right. Yeah, so basically, you basically find out that Shemeshka is the one that actually killed you originally. Like,
twist.
She actually killed you. That's why she was looking you down. And the reason why she killed you is because of I remember why she killed. I don't think
it says the characters independently ran afoul of her some time ago. So she has been killing your player characters for different reasons across time, repeatedly, for not related reasons, basically. You were just some fucking guy she keeps killing, and you keep waking up and coming back to her without remembering it.
Yeah. And then she has the imprisoned incarnation, the actual final incarnation of your character that will restore you to your full self effectively.
Yep. Quote, she has killed each character dozens of times. She finally trapped each using the resplendent cage. So this is the thing I guessed from the press release when I saw that you were going to end up at level 17. I said you're going to keep making new incarnations of yourself, but I bet at some point you all join back together and level jump, which is true. Mm-hmm. There are a couple of different ways this can kind of roll out. I think she is statted. I think you could beat her ass if you want to, but also she will teleport away if, it goes a different way. So, this is the big confrontation. You're like, what's your fucking problem? And she says, you keep showing up here. Why are you doing this? Leave me alone. I don't know you. And then you get get yourself back. Everyone goes to level 17. And then you find out why you're glitched and what's up with Rome. So reveal after reveal after reveal.
Yeah, and you mentioned about, and we talked earlier about the Great Modron March, and it comes to that, right? That is the big thing that is I would consider that grandly as the final boss. Effectively, is resolving that cleanly.
Yeah, so every X amount of years, all the Modrons go on a big survey. They roam around the multiverse collecting all this data, and they bring it back to their plane. This is the plot of the famous book, March of the Modron. But some of them are trapped, and they're getting corrupted. They need the new data. This is why you've been filling out the worksheet, because you get a chance here to make a bunch of Modron think something is true. And in Planescape, if enough people think something is true, it becomes true. So let's set up the final thing. So you get all your memories. You're at level 17. You get a bunch of items. There's this, you're kind of setting up for this big thing. And then we go to the final location here, which is the Tyrant Spiral.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the things I find fun about Tyrant Spiral is there's a side note here about the fungal observers that will comment on the characters when they fuck up in a fight. And stuff like that.
Yeah. So yeah, this is kind of a conceptual location here. I don't know if we want to get too much into it, but you need to go to the realm of Gizmonid, another one of these fucking goddamn pronunciation things. But there's a portal that says the location is up to you. Thank you, book. It's very helpful. But yeah, you basically need to go to this place where all these Modron from the march have been trapped, and they've been going in in a circle, basically. Is that you think a fair description of what's going on? Or is there's all these robots who are just caught in a loop?
And the scale is important. It's thousands of Modron. It's not like a handful. It's like a sizable portion of the march has been it's like the electrical line has been severed. The internet cable's been cut out, right? Someone unplugged the fiber optic Modrons from the connection here.
The Modron are caught in the shifting realm of Gizmonid, a beholder god. Blah, blah, blah. Shemeshka discovered the Modrons in the Tyrant Spiral, an ever-shifting part of Gesminid's realm. So there's two things here, right? There's the realm of the Beholder God, and inside is the Tyrant Spiral. Sorry about all the fucking terminology. She exposed the Modrons to fiendish influence, convincing them the Outlands are overrun by evil beings. So the more if you convince these robots something is true, it becomes true. That's the whole thing with Planescape. Shemeshka was trying to do that because she's a bad person. She's a villain. And now that you've either killed her or driven her off, now you get to be the person who manipulates these poor robots.
Yep. And you can choose to gaslight them if you want, I guess. But I will say that the map of Tyrant Spiral is pretty sick. It's just less like so wild looking.
Yeah. There's teeth on this platform. It's made out of skulls and shit. Yeah, this is a very spooky location. But yeah, this is the actual true end game final dungeon. This is the bonus dungeon. You have to go through this. It's very long. We don't need to belabor all these sections because it's a crawl. This is the more traditional kind of D&D. And then you end up with the kind of final boss here, which is the Modron X01. This picture is so fucking cool.
It's so great. Like, it is definitely, like, this is definitely, like, true ending boss vibes, you know?
Yeah. But yeah, I don't even think you have to fight this, right? You can convince it. There's a whole thing here. The Modron leader X01 isn't just damaged, its mind has been overwhelmed. This is a result of the flawed orders it received when it left Mechanus, but more because of the misinformation it gathered in Tyrant Spiral. So a character who spends 1 minute investigating X01 can find a panel leaking green vapor, blah, blah, blah. There's like a lot of stuff you can do here that isn't just throwing down. And then you can replace the data, and there's kind of several different options here. So there's you can give it accurate data, inconsistent data, or skewed data, and those all have a different effect on the world state. Like, this is like the end of this adventure, but then presumably you can keep playing, and you know the world will have changed. For example, chaotic. Modrons more vigorously oppose chaotic beings. Modrons become more hostile against chaotic beings and expressions of lawlessness. Stuff like this. There's an illustration of Modrons delving into looks like hell. They're fighting in the blood war between demons and devils. They're just in the sky. They have flaming wings and they're shooting guns.
Like,
they're like badass now because of you.
Yeah, and it's like one of those things where, effectively have these different endings, and it's not just like one specific choice. It is the culmination of your party's interactions with the Outlands and understanding what they are. And like you said, that's where the payoff for the homework assignment is. I do like how there is a difference between accurate, inconsistent, and skewed, and then for each direction skewed ends up going can cause different things. And it's also interesting how all the skewed outcomes do have like some negative consequence of some sort. Even say, appeasing their lawfulness. Well, then that means chaotic beings have less resistance, so they're going to be more aggressive and stuff. And then maybe you have to do more to fix things.
Yeah. So the way this ends is kind of similar to a lot of Planescape stuff, where the power of belief changes the world. I have a lot of feelings about that. And then there's a little epilogue where it talks about the different characters who can have feelings about this. Rome can be a friend to the party or not. Pharaoh, that spy all the way back at the beginning who helped you escape the cops. And then if Shemeshka is still alive, it's very funny that it mentions if your interference accelerated the blood war, she sends you a polite thank you note, which is very, very bitchy. And then literally the campaign ends with a kind of a fun little, it's like a Marvel after credit scene.
Oh,
where,
absolutely.
You get a message from the Lady of Pain. So she sends you a little cube that you can use to make portals because, you're the main characters. Go on more adventures.
Yeah, exactly. You're basically now your end game characters. Let's go. So yeah, that's the campaign, and we're 2.5 hours into this recording.
Yeah, I mean, I had fun. I feel like it should be clear from our tone. I'm not claiming the authority to make this like unilateral proclamation, but I think it might be my favorite, if not the best, of these type of books.
Absolutely.
I loved it. It's creative. It has a lot of flexibility, but also a lot of specificity. Beautiful art. I want to steal tons of shit from this. Every couple pages, I was like, I'm using this. At the risk of overstating it, I'm like, oh, this is the best book. This is the best D&D book.
Pretty much. Like it lacks in player options, but makes up in so many other areas. How much do you want to spend talking about Morte's Planar Parade?
Yeah, I mean, I understand we should probably wrap this up. I do want to hit a couple of things real quick. If you are good to go.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah.
All right. Morte's Planar Parade, the monster manual. Disclaimer: everything in this book is true, except the parts that ain't. The planes change. Coins and threats adjust a few details. Boring bits get more colorful. You know how it is. What's what? You're a cagey sort chief. You'll figure it out. Once again, everything is negotiable. The power of belief. Love that stuff. So we don't need to go through every monster in this manual. I have a couple ones I wanted to point out specifically. One you brought up earlier was with the Ardlings. So I want to discuss specifically anthropomorphic people and creatures. Well, let's start with this because there are a number of them in this book, and I feel it muddies the design somewhat. That there are so many. For example, the Archons, which are like a lawful good creature. There's a bear person and there's a dog person. But then they try to also have the Gardenals, which are animal people. And there's simply, for my money, not enough design space there. There's not a big enough gap between what are supposed to be pretty distinct like ecosystems. Does that make sense? Like
what muddies it further is that Archons and Gardenals are both Celestials. They're both animal types, and the only meaningful real distinction between them is that Archons are lawful good and Gardenals are neutral good. It's just like it's tough, right? Because I would say what muddies it even further, honestly, is the introductory chapter to this book, in my opinion.
Say more about that.
So the introductory chapter has a section after talking about petitioners called Planar Influences, and it's a pretty extensive section that goes over describing creatures from the various outer planes and how basically those outer planes can make variants of creatures. And it goes even further than this after going all these different traits. So for an example, if a creature is from, let's say, the Beastlands, traits they might be trackless. They don't leave tracks when they move around. They have the ability to see invisible creatures, or they have the ability to speak with beasts or plants. Once you get past that, then you get to the denizens of the Outlands. You get to denizens of the Outlands, and it shows variations of aberrations, beasts, celestials, constructs, dragons, elementals, all of whom are being influenced by different outer planes. So we go to the dragons. You have an example of a regular ancient gold dragon versus a fairy dragon influenced by Mount Celestia, another dragon influenced by Hades. And it sort of looks like the Cardinals and Archon thing could have been unified underneath just one race with different planar influences. And that split's a little weird when it's the Archons versus Cardinals. I feel like that might be just an import from prior editions, but I agree with you. Because there's so much content in that Denizens of the Outlands section where it just gives you a lot of ideas of how all these creature types can have variations that are wild based on the planar influences on them.
Yeah, so this is like a templating issue, right? Because
right.
D&D loves to have this thing where it's like, here's an elf, and then there's a dark elf, and a wood elf, and a high elf, and a light elf, and a star elf. You're adding templates to something iconic, and it helps fill up pages in a book you're trying to sell. I get that. Like, I'm not against that idea necessarily, but it does mean that there's a lot of this book, which is already a pretty short book, that is just versions of already existing things, which is a little disappointing. So like that's a major quibble I have here. Some of the other stuff is like legacy issues. So like in my ideal version of D&D, each alignment has one iconic thing. So like lawful good would be angels, neutral good would be Cardinals, and then chaotic good would have been Eladrin. That was like the thing that in second edition. But there's been like drift over time. The Eladrin became planar as opposed to like, otherworldly, and the Cardinals disappeared for years. We previously talked about this, I think, on some kind of podcast where I was like, the furry community would go bananas for Cardinals. They're so flexible and such a great concept.
Hence my complaint about the Reddit ads that almost are like fur bait in terms of like, oh, here's this mouse cardinal, player options not included. And to your point, you have the Arboreal Cardinal, which is distinct from the Aarakocra, which is distinct from the Outland and stuff like that. And yeah, like templating.
If you see like the dog Archon and the horse Cardinal side by side, how would you not think that there's different kinds of the same thing, I would much prefer if lawful good was all angels. Some of those, could be like the winged humanoids from medieval art or whatever, and some could be like the wheels covered in eyes that they dip their toe into with the Lantern Archon. In season 6, I brought in more actual biblical angels than the book prescribes, but that's a cleaner divide for me than having there being random anthropomorphic animals in several different alignments and then not implementing the Ardlings. So I don't know if you want to speak to the Ardlings again, but that was a thing that was planned and then apparently canceled.
It was initially planned. I think the tricky thing with Ardlings was, one, the naming scheme of it may sound too close to just Aasimar. For some people, I think the other issue that some had was just that they were kind of vaguely defined, because I think a lot of people would think about their initial description and think that they were meant to be evocative of like Egyptian deities. I can almost think of like some of the Amonkhet deities and how they would kind of that, like when I think of like templating for what I envision it's like, well, the different deities in Amonkhet feel appropriate as to what Ardlings are kind of derived from. And so when it came to describing Ardlings in detail within Rezubian, I was kind of playing light with it because I didn't want to invoke too much about like the planes. I didn't want to step on anything about seasons 5 onward that might have been like misstating about the state of soul or anything else. But also I just wanted to keep things up in the air since Ardlings existed in one form, they got revised on Unearthed Arcana, then it just got scrapped from the PHB. And like you, it would have been neat to have seen even like a reference to them as a concept in the book here, but they're not mentioned anywhere in here.
Yeah. So a couple other quick hits. The Bariar, who are like the one of the iconic, or not even iconic necessarily. They're just kind of the common folk of Eastgard. They're basically centaurs but goats.
Yep.
I kind of had one show up in season 6 almost as a joke. Like I didn't draw too much attention to it, but like the idea that like we did centaurs and then we filed the number off and tried to pass it off as a new guy. I always thought it was a little silly. There needs to be a couple more iconic new creatures.
Sure. Another small quibble I'll note: one of the glitch character depictions they have in the adventure is a barrier variant of the character. Is depicted as a barrier variant, but it's not a player race, right? So it's centaur, but like it's another one of those things where like it's a weird like templating thing and also weird presentation thing on that part there.
I think you would use the centaur stats from the Theros crossover with Magic the Gathering.
That is correct. I think there was also a reference for the centaurs in the Ravnica book as well.
Oh yeah,
possibly. But one thing I'll note as a general commentary beyond that is another templating thing, actually, but it's a mechanical templating. This is kind of like a little bit of an elephant in the room in some of the communities. None of the creatures in this book have legendary actions because WotC's been phasing them out as a design point.
Oh, interesting. Do you know why that is?
So my assumption from reading comments and stuff is that the concern is twofold. Number one are players who will see these legendary actions being used and being confused about how they interact with turn order, because like, okay, they get an action outside of their turn in between turns and stuff. And the second concern seems to be that for some GMs, remembering to use them or using them tactically is a little tricky. So what has been happening is that creatures that would have legendary actions instead now have multiple reactions per round. So if you were to look at the The Bear Noloth, for example, the Bear Noloth now has 3 reactions per turn, per round rather, and they have the reason for the reaction space. The main argument in favor of, and I can agree to this, is that it's easier for the GM to sort of know how to use it. It's almost like reminder text on a Magic the Gathering card, right? Afflict Despair. When a creature that the Bannerloth can see hits with an attack roll, this happens. Or if a creature that it sees ends its turn, it can do this, right? That's the type of design space it's in now. They still have legendary resistance, but there's no longer legendary actions for any of these creatures. And if you look through this book, that is the case. And this was also the case in the Giants book as well.
Okay, yeah, that's almost doesn't even seem to be that big of a mechanical change, just more of a reframing, because you still break the 1 reaction per round rule here.
Correct.
Noloth can take up to 3 reactions. So, it actually isn't that different. It's just a different way of framing it.
Right. It's like I said, it's like a templating and framing thing. What's also interesting is that there are some creatures that don't have legendary resistances, but have multiple reactions per turn, and there's some creatures with legendary resistances but no multiple reactions, so it allows for an extra little bit of variability in that design space too. But yeah, it's a change that the more I've been thinking about it and the more I've been hearing other people's arguments, I'm like, yeah, this is fine. It's just another way of framing it. But some people have been getting a little up in arms, like, oh man, this is such a great space. Like, I like legendary actions, but this might be a cleaner way of presenting it for sure.
Yeah. So to move through a couple more creatures here, like I said before, I was underwhelmed by the Dark Weaver, which is a challenge rating 10 spider. There's no demons or devils, which I think is okay. Those are really overrepresented, but they did have a bunch of Demodans, which are the Carcerai fiend creature. And this is another, maybe I'm just being nitpicky, but this is another case where if you put a devil, a demon, and a Demodan next to each other, I don't know that there is any visual language for distinguishing them. I wish that they had a more distinct identity. Does that make sense?
No, I mean, it kind of speaks back to like the MTGs, like the strength of having like, and again, I can understand the aversion between having like the stereotyping that can come by associating a particular like creature to a particular alignment. But in this case here, we're talking about alignment, orienting the planes, not the planes operate. So you can even dissociate a little bit from that. But like Magic has that clean language where for each color and even color pairs, you can associate specific creatures to it, and it makes it easy to understand, and it makes it easy to mold around and play with as you are working with it. So I think that is it's a not really a missed opportunity, but I do think it muddies things overall between the Gardenals, the Archons, and the Demodans.
Yeah, this is one of those things where it's like in real life, animals are, diverse and have wacky things, and some look like other ones. It's not a big deal. But in this kind of fiction, I feel like it would scratch a certain brain itch for there to be cleaner. For there to be some kind of creature that I've never seen before, or doesn't look like any other creature that represents Carcerai, especially since so much of Planescape is about this like symmetry. It's like there's a plane for every alignment, there's a faction for every philosophy. So yeah, if there was something a little bit more unique for the Demodans, this is also something. It's just like, oh, we created the Demodans 30 years ago. It's too late now.
Right.
But yeah, just not impressed with their design. The art's fine, but yeah. Next up, I want to talk about the Eater of Knowledge, which is we missed a big opportunity to have this in season 10 because this is a Mind Flayer adjacent creature. It's an anthropomorphic brain. Honestly, it serves. It slays.
My favorite detail about it are the goggles strapped on its face. In the
Is that what those are? I thought those were just eyes.
It looks like there's some straps coming off the side of it and going over, right? So it's like it's goggles.
Okay, yeah, definitely. I can see that.
It's easy to see why. It has no like eyelids, so those eyes are going to dry out too quickly otherwise. Yeah.
Oh my god, yeah. So this is something created by the Mind Flayer god. I think I said it offhandedly in this season that the Mind Flayers have a god, but they don't like him because they're just not religious. But yeah, what if a brain was a giant? I just think it's funny. I think it's a good image. It's something that you can add to the Illithid Menagerie if you want to do an Illithid-based adventure. We talked about the Cardinals. I wish the Cardinals were, a bigger faction and all the.
Before you do, I have to note one other detail like about the Eater of Knowledge. When you first encounter it, you roll a d10 to determine how many brains it's already consumed.
Yeah, that's great. There's another inevitable. They've put like one inevitable in every book for like a couple of years now. Like there's never been a section that's just like, here are the inevitables. There's like, what was the Marut was in a previous book. Yeah. It was in the, Monsters of the Multiverse. And now we have a Kol Yarut. Yeah. Which is very powerful. These are like challenge level 20 and above. These are people who do not fuck around. They're we've discussed it before. They've shown up on the show, but here's a stat block for one. It just looks like a 4-armed robot. And then we get to the Maleficent. First of all, it looks like it's attacking Karlach from Baldur's Gate, which I don't like. But this struck me. The idea of the evil elephant man. It's because because of magic crossovers, the Loxodon exists. So if you wanted an elephant guy, you could have an elephant guy. But specifically the Maleficent, the bad elephant who has noxious poisonous gas from its trunk. It looks like it has 5 eyes. It's very eerie. This whole thing rocks to me. I think it's cool.
I look at this and I don't think it's attacking Karlach. I think it's attacking Tybalt, honestly.
Okay. The Maleficent shouldn't work. I think it's kind of silly because it's just like, once again, anthropomorphic animals are spread across so many different monster types that it can get frustrating. But this art looks cool. Their use as they were guards in the gate town of Cursed. I just think they're cool. That really works for me. And then there's a bunch of new Modrons. I feel like we get a couple Modrons every once in a while. But these ones there's one with a bunch of like little tentacles. There's one that's kind of like a weird worm. And then later there's like a fucking mech suit one. So Modrons take a big role in this adventure. It makes sense that we'd see more of them. We've already talked about the Romani. Do we have anything else to add there? I love their redesign. The art's very evocative. They sucked before. People forgot they existed for like 20 years. I feel like I was the only one who said the word Romani into a microphone until recently.
No, I mean, like, then you have the stat block for like the, Shemeshka there, the sunflies, which are cute. Yep, they're cute. That's all there is. Yes, they're cute.
Yeah, this is reminiscent of the Bumble Sloth from season 7. They're like kind of fuzzy insects with the faces of sheep, I want to say, is what they're supposed to be.
Yeah. They're definitely sheep-like for sure. I mean, and then once you move on to the time dragons, you get the sickest art of the ancient time dragon. Just frame that on the wall.
This might be where we end, because the end of the book has the iconic NPCs, or like the representative NPCs for each of the factions, which is fine, but we talked about that already. The Time Dragon, though, gets 2 pieces of like 70s van art. This is like an album. You ever seen the band Asia, the progressive rock band? Their albums?
Yeah, for sure.
This is Asia shit. There's 2 of them. One is like its full resplendent glory. It kind of has like almost like an antler situation, which is really sick.
Yeah.
Just beautiful original art. And the other one is using its time breath, which is a funny concept, because like if you're hitting someone with your dragon breath, you could just annihilate them. But if also you want to fuck with their place in the fucking space-time continuum, that's a funny thing to do to someone. The time dragon is just dope. It's like an epic level, challenge level 26. So this thing is fighting Tarrasques. Luckily in the campaign it's your friend if you play your cards right. But
yes, right. Like it's one of those cases where like the faction ages, they look cool, but the time dragon, man,
Dragon is in the name of the game, right? So they've been trying to top themselves for years and years and years. I think time dragons have appeared before in the game's history, but never as cool as this. Like, it's just, the art is extremely fun, and it is like overwhelmingly powerful. You would never fight an ancient time dragon unless you just wanted to see what happened, to see how badly you were stomped.
Mm-hmm. I want to get a time dragon to join my Spyball team. Okay, that's what we want to do here. Just
A quick Google tells me the time dragons were previously printed in 3rd edition, and I don't mean to be cruel to the artist, but does not bring me the kind of joy this new art does. I don't want to be mean. You did your best, but this new shit completely washes that third edition shit.
Yeah. Like John Tedrick is the artist for the Time Dragon. Both the pieces of art are John Tedrick, and yeah, just nails it. It's just so cool. So yeah, like I would guess get it from our demeanor, like the bestiary and stuff like is fine in Morte's Planar Parade, but like yeah, it's probably the weakest of the three just by that nature of what it is. Though I do like the introductory chapter. There's a lot of fun in there.
Yeah, I personally collect monster manuals, like even non D&D ones. I have a bunch of like Pathfinder ones and stuff. I just like seeing pictures of monsters. It's like half of my whole thing with Magic the Gathering as well. So yeah, it's a little disappointing for me. And I don't know if this is just like me being like OCD about it. Just being like, no, there should be a specific design that's distinct from the silhouette, from for each alignment and for each like maybe that's not the way the world works, and I should stop being weird about it.
Yeah. You don't want to play Who's That Cardinal, just
yeah. I don't want some Jigglypuff from above shit on here, but there's also some great highlights. The Romani are back in a big way. It's really cool, stuff like that. So 3 hours on this product. You can tell I've had a lot of thoughts about it. I've done almost nothing but read since these books showed up. I can't wait to go back to Planescape now. I'm really excited. I don't know when it'll be, but it's gone from me saying like, if the opportunity presents itself, maybe we'll do it again, to being like, yes. I'm excited. So I guess that's a successful product.
Yeah, like I said, like even being disappointed about the lack of player options there, the other stuff is very inspiring. Like of all the different settings and stuff we've had books for, this one has just really hit a lot of points in my head really well. And like even just the first book, Sigil and Outlands, was great. There's so many fun little things about the Turn of Fortune's Wheel, which I think can ultimately work well for either experienced or new players. Once you get past the glitch character opening there, I think there can be a lot of fun to be had there. And even at its lowest point, I'm like, it's weak almost by proxy of what the stuff around it, because some of the stuff just goes so high. It goes so wild.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, when you introduce the Spyball, it's like, well, it's all downhill from here. So.
Bunch of nerds.
All right, so if you're listening to these episodes as they're released, we are nearing the end. So this is going to be, your weekly episode. The thing that just happened in the story of Rezubian is Yaush's plan is revealed, and we're going to deal with that. And then, we're on our way to the conclusion. So enjoy that. Thank you for listening. If you sat through all 3 hours of this, I hope it was something for you. I had fun.
Yeah, and if you have complaints, just at me on the Discord server. Just come at me.